Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying my videos, please click the like button. It is the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. The protagonist finds himself at a breaking point, mired in a deep and oppressive melancholy. His recent divorce has left him emotionally shattered, and he now resides in a dim, smoke-filled apartment that seems to echo his inner turmoil. The once familiar surroundings have become suffocating. The nicotine-stained walls and perpetually drawn curtains amplify the sense of despair. Each day blends into the next, marked only by the accumulation of empty bottles and the lingering scent of cigarettes. Adding to his woes, he loses his job, a final blow that sends him spiraling into a deeper abyss. The weight of his failures presses down on him, and he spends his days in a haze of regret and self-pity. The television flickers silently in the background, casting ghostly shadows across the room, but offering no solace. Nights are long and restless, filled with fragmented dreams and haunting memories of what once was. His friends, seeing his rapid descent, urge him to change his surroundings. They suggest a temporary escape, a retreat to some place that might offer a reprieve from the suffocating gloom of his current existence. The idea of leaving his dark sanctuary is both daunting and appealing. The thought of fresh air and open spaces clashes with his inertia, but he knows something must change. The staleness of his apartment, with its oppressive silence and heavy atmosphere, has become unbearable. His friend's concern only underscores the severity of his situation. In a moment of clarity, or perhaps sheer desperation, he decides to leave. Packing his belongings feels surreal, as if he is moving through a fog. The decision is made quickly, almost impulsively, driven by an urgent need to escape the ghosts of his past and the tangible presence of his failures that haunt every corner of his apartment. The journey ahead is uncertain, shrouded in the unknown, but anything seems better than the suffocating void he has been living in. As he locks the door behind him, he steps into the unknown, hoping to find some semblance of peace, or at least a distraction from the relentless torment that has become his daily life. In a state of desperation, the protagonist makes a fateful decision to return to his family home, hoping to find solace or at least a reprieve from his unraveling life. The journey back feels long and heavy, each mile weighed down by memories and uncertainties. The house, an old and imposing structure, looms large as he approaches, its silhouette stark against the overcast sky. As he steps through the creaking front door, he is greeted by an oppressive silence, thick with the weight of years gone by. His mother, frail and bedridden, lies in her room, her presence almost ghostly. She rarely rises from her bed, her illness having taken a severe toll on her. The air in her room is stale, filled with the scent of medicine and the faint, lingering aroma of lavender, a futile attempt to mask the reality of her condition. In the dimly lit house, 3 women dwell: his ailing mother, his stern and formidable grandmother, and his cousin Marina, whose presence is both familiar and unsettling. His grandmother, a woman of iron will and sharp eyes, seems to command the house with an unspoken authority. Her disapproval is palpable, radiating from her with an almost tangible force. She watches him closely, her gaze piercing and judgmental, a constant reminder of the family's turbulent past. Marina, on the other hand, is a more enigmatic figure. She moves through the house with an air of quiet melancholy, her eyes often distant and her demeanor reflective of some unspoken sorrow. Her interactions with him are sparse, yet laden with an unnameable tension. There is something about her that unsettles him, a sense of hidden depths and unresolved emotions. The house itself feels alive, its walls whispering secrets and its floors creaking under the weight of memories. The dim lighting casts long shadows, and every corner seems to hold a hint of the past, a fleeting glimpse of something just out of sight. As he settles into this new yet familiar environment, the sense of unease grows. The once comforting embrace of home now feels like a prison, filled with unseen specters and the haunting echoes of bygone days. Each night, the protagonist lies awake, listening to the house. The whispers of the wind through the old windows, the creaks and groans of the settling structure, and the occasional, inexplicable noises that send shivers down his spine. The presence of his mother, grandmother, and Marina does little to alleviate his growing sense of dread. Instead, their own silent struggles and unspoken histories seem to amplify the eerie atmosphere. In this house, time seems to stand still, each day blending into the next with a suffocating monotony. The protagonist finds himself caught between the desire to escape and the need to confront the shadows of his past, which seem to lurk in every corner of the family home. The oppressive atmosphere, combined with the palpable sense of unease among the women, creates a haunting backdrop to his attempts at finding peace and resolution. The family home, now a silent sentinel to past ambitions and present sorrows, was built by the protagonist's father. He had envisioned it as a familial stronghold, a place where generations would gather and flourish. Its sturdy walls and spacious rooms were meant to be filled with laughter and love, a dream that seemed almost tangible in the early years. The house stood as a testament to his hopes and efforts, a physical embodiment of his desire to create a lasting legacy. However, the family's history was marked by turbulence and hardship. The father, a man of strong will and determination, had faced numerous challenges in his quest to provide for his family. Financial difficulties, personal struggles, and the weight of responsibility had taken their toll on him. Despite his best efforts, the harmonious family life he had dreamed of remained elusive. The house, instead of becoming a sanctuary, turned into a silent witness to the family's trials and tribulations. The protagonist never got the chance to know his father intimately. 13 years ago, death had claimed him, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. His memories of his father are fragmented and fleeting, like scattered photographs in a dusty album. There were brief moments of warmth and connection, but they are overshadowed by the harsh reality of his father's absence. The protagonist often finds himself wondering what kind of man his father truly was, what dreams and fears he harbored, and what advice he might have offered had he lived longer. The father's death marked the beginning of a slow and steady decline for the family. Without his guiding presence, the household struggled to maintain a sense of unity and purpose. The grandmother's authority grew more pronounced, her stern demeanor and rigid expectations casting a long shadow over the family. The mother, already weakened by illness, withdrew further into herself, her strength sapped by grief and the burdens of daily life. Marina, caught in the crossfire of familial tensions, retreated into a shell of quiet despair. The house itself seemed to absorb the family's sorrow. Its once bright rooms grew dim and somber, the air thick with unspoken regrets and lingering sadness. The walls, which had witnessed so many hopes and dreams, now stood as silent guardians of the family's secrets. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the old windows, seemed to echo with the voices of the past. In this environment, the protagonist feels the weight of his father's legacy pressing down on him. He walks the halls his father once walked, sleeps in the rooms his father designed, and yet feels a profound disconnect. The father's presence is everywhere and nowhere, a ghost that haunts not with spectral apparitions but with the heavy burden of unfulfilled promises and unanswered questions. As he navigates the complexities of his family's past, the protagonist grapples with his own place within this legacy. The house, with all its haunted memories and silent accusations, becomes both a refuge and a prison. He is compelled to delve deeper into the history that shaped him, to uncover the truths that lie hidden beneath layers of sorrow and silence. Only then can he hope to understand his father's dreams and, perhaps, find a way to lay the restless spirits of the past to rest. The protagonist's grandmother harbored a deep-seated hatred for his father, a loathing that was as intense as it was complex. Despite the undeniable fact that he had come to their aid during the family's darkest hours, her resentment never waned. The father had provided much-needed support when they were on the brink of financial ruin, offering stability and security that they desperately needed. Yet for the grandmother, this assistance came with a price that she found too steep to bear. In her eyes, the father was a man who wielded his generosity like a weapon, a way to bind them to his will. She saw his every act of kindness as a transaction, a calculated move to claim her daughter as his own. Her daughter's marriage to him was not a union of love but a pact forged out of necessity. The grandmother felt cornered, trapped by circumstances that left her with no choice but to agree to the marriage. This perceived coercion bred a fierce animosity within her. To the grandmother, the father represented everything she despised. He was a constant reminder of her own powerlessness, a symbol of the sacrifices she had been forced to make. She resented his intrusion into their lives, his influence over her daughter, and the way he disrupted the delicate balance of their family. Her hatred was not just personal but deeply rooted in her perception of him as an usurper who had taken advantage of their vulnerability. Living under the same roof with him was a daily torment. The grandmother's bitterness seeped into every interaction, her sharp words and cold demeanor creating a tense and hostile atmosphere. She could never forgive him for what she saw as a forced union, and this resentment cast a long shadow over the household. Her disdain was palpable, a corrosive force that affected everyone around her. The father's attempts to bridge the gap were futile. No matter how hard he tried to prove his good intentions, to show that he genuinely cared for the family, her animosity remained unwavering. She viewed his every action through a lens of suspicion and contempt. The more he tried to help, the more she believed he was trying to control and dominate them. This strained relationship took a toll on the entire family. The mother, caught between her husband and her own mother, was torn apart by conflicting loyalties. She loved her husband, but could not disregard her mother's suffering and resentment. This emotional tug-of-war left her exhausted and deeply unhappy. The protagonist, growing up in this environment, sensed the underlying tensions, even if he didn't fully understand their origins. The grandmother's hatred also influenced the protagonist's view of his father. Although he never knew his father well, the stories and attitudes he absorbed from his grandmother colored his perception. He grew up with a conflicted image of his father, torn between the man who had built their home and provided for them, and the tyrant his grandmother painted him to be. As the protagonist now returns to the family home, these old animosities and unresolved tensions continue to linger. The grandmother's hatred is like a ghost, haunting the halls and infecting the very air they breathe. It is a silent, oppressive presence that he must confront and understand if he is to make peace with his past and the legacy his father left behind. The condition of the house was dire, a shadow of its former glory. The protagonist, surveying the dilapidated structure, the house creaked and groaned with every gust of wind, as if it were an ancient ship caught in a relentless storm. Determined to restore some semblance of order, he decided to start with the roof. Climbing up to inspect the damage, he found the wooden beams rotting and the shingles cracked and missing in places. It was no wonder the rain had been pouring in, creating a damp, musty atmosphere that permeated the entire house. The attic, once a place of childhood exploration and dusty treasures, was now a dark, foreboding space filled with the scent of mold and decay. He shivered involuntarily, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Determined to reclaim the house from its current state of neglect, the protagonist set about gathering the necessary tools and materials. The local hardware store, a relic of the town's past prosperity, provided the supplies: new shingles, beams, and tar paper. As he loaded the truck, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, the hairs on the back of his neck prickling with unease. Back at the house, he climbed the ladder and began the arduous task of tearing away the damaged parts of the roof. Each strike of the hammer echoed through the empty rooms below, disturbing the silence that had settled like dust over the years. As he worked, memories of his father filtered through his mind. He remembered watching his father repair the very same roof, his strong hands working with confidence and skill. Now it was his turn to bring life back into the crumbling structure. Days turned into weeks as he labored tirelessly. He replaced the rotting beams, laid down fresh tar paper, and meticulously fitted the new shingles into place. The work was grueling, and he often found himself working late into the night, his only company the distant hooting of owls and the occasional rustle of leaves. The house seemed to resist his efforts, groaning in protest with every nail driven, every beam secured. Inside, the house was no less daunting. The wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips, revealing the discolored plaster beneath. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes in the corners. The protagonist attacked the grime with a fervor, scrubbing walls, polishing floors, and airing out the musty rooms. The old house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its dark corners reluctantly yielding to the light. Yet, as he worked, strange things began to happen. At night, he would hear soft footsteps echoing through the empty halls, the sound unmistakably human yet impossible. He would turn to find the door he had closed standing ajar or a window he knew he had latched wide open. Tools would disappear, only to reappear in places he was certain he had not left them. The atmosphere grew heavier with each passing day, as if the house itself was alive, its ancient spirit stirring. One evening, exhausted from his labors, he sat on the front porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky bled into twilight, and the shadows lengthened, creeping across the yard like dark fingers. He could almost feel the house behind him, looming and watchful. Despite the progress he had made, the air was thick with an unsettling presence, an unspoken tension that set his nerves on edge. As the stars appeared, he resolved to push through his discomfort. The house needed him, and perhaps, in some strange way, he needed the house. It was a connection to his past, to his father, and to a part of himself that he had long buried. With the roof nearly complete, and the interior slowly returning to its former state, he felt a glimmer of hope. But deep down, he knew that the real work was just beginning. The house held secrets, and if he was to truly restore it, he would have to confront whatever it was that lurked in the shadows, watching his every move. Realizing the urgency of finding work to support the household and himself, the protagonist decided to take on whatever odd jobs he could find in the small town. The morning air was crisp as he stepped outside, axe in hand, to tackle the growing pile of logs that needed splitting. The rhythmic sound of the axe biting into wood became a kind of meditative process for him, each swing a brief escape from his thoughts. He would lose himself in the physicality of the work, the satisfying crack as the logs split cleanly, the scent of fresh pine mingling with the lingering mustiness of the house. Despite his focus on these tasks, his mind often wandered to his place within the family. His mother, frail and often bedridden, relied heavily on him now. The sight of her pale, drawn face haunted him, a stark reminder of how much things had changed. She was the reason he pushed himself so hard he wanted to ease her burden, to bring some semblance of comfort and stability back into their lives. His grandmother, a stern and silent presence, watched him from the kitchen window as he worked. Her disapproval was palpable, an almost tangible force that pressed down on him. She had never liked his father, and by extension, it seemed, she struggled to accept him. He could feel her eyes on him as he labored, a constant reminder of the family tensions that simmered just below the surface. Marina, his cousin, was a different story. She was a quiet, enigmatic figure who drifted through the house like a ghost, her pale skin and dark eyes lending her an otherworldly appearance. She seldom spoke, but when she did, her words were sharp and to the point, cutting through the air with a precision that left no room for argument. Despite her aloofness, he sensed a kinship with her, a shared understanding of the family's complicated history. In the afternoons, after a morning spent splitting logs or mending the garden fence, he would sit at the old kitchen table, scouring the local newspaper for job listings. Opportunities were scarce in the fading town, but he circled a few possibilities and made notes, planning his next steps. He knew he needed to contribute more than just physical labor. He needed to bring in money to support the household. The house itself, despite the progress he had made, still felt heavy with an oppressive atmosphere. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the old light fixtures seemed to whisper secrets. He often found himself glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow flit past or to hear an unfamiliar voice. The sense of being watched, of not being alone, never left him. One evening, as he was stacking the last of the split logs, he heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. He paused, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. It was a voice, low and indistinct, but undeniably there. He strained to hear, but it was gone as quickly as it had come, leaving him standing in the gathering twilight with a cold sweat trickling down his spine. Shaking off the unease, he went back inside, determined to keep his mind on practical matters. He helped prepare dinner, the simple act of chopping vegetables and stirring a pot grounding him in the moment. The kitchen, with its worn linoleum floor and outdated appliances, felt like a safe haven, a place where the shadows couldn't reach. As the days turned into weeks, he found small jobs here and there, fixing a neighbor's fence, helping to paint a porch, even a bit of yard work. Each job was a step towards stability, a way to support his family and perhaps find a new purpose for himself. But the house, with its secrets and its shadows, never let him forget that there was more to his journey than just physical labor. There was something deeper, something dark and restless, waiting to be uncovered. And as he lay in bed at night, listening to the house settle around him, He knew that he would have to face whatever it was, for the sake of his family and his own sanity. The line between the mundane and the supernatural had blurred, and he was caught in the middle, striving to bring light and order to a place that seemed determined to remain in darkness. One evening, as the protagonist settled into the worn armchair opposite his grandmother, the house seemed quieter than usual. The dim light from the single lamp cast long shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere both intimate and eerie. His grandmother, a stoic woman with sharp eyes that had seen too much, sipped her tea slowly before speaking. "Our family has a history," she began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of years. "Your father, despite all his faults, was part of that history. He built this house with his own hands, brick by brick, determined to create a sanctuary for us." The protagonist nodded, listening intently. His grandmother rarely spoke of the past, and he sensed this was a rare opportunity to understand the deeper currents that shaped their lives. "You see those books over there?" She gestured to a sturdy bookshelf in the corner, filled with old, leather-bound volumes. "Those books survived the worst of times. Wars, poverty, even the fire that took half of our old house. They are our heritage, a testament to our resilience." He glanced at the books, noting their well-worn spines and the faint musty smell that permeated the air around them. They were clearly cherished, symbols of endurance through generations of hardship. As the conversation continued, it inevitably turned to their current struggles. The protagonist spoke of the odd jobs he had taken, the repairs he had made, and the ever-present need for more money. His grandmother listened patiently, her expression unreadable. "We've always had problems with money," she said finally, setting her teacup down with a soft clink. "But your father left something behind. He wasn't as foolish as some might think. There are funds hidden away, though finding them won't be easy." He leaned forward, intrigued. This was the first he had heard of any inheritance or hidden funds. "What do you mean? Where are they?" A shadow passed over her face, a flicker of something between resentment and sadness. "Your father was secretive. He didn't trust easily, and with good reason. The funds are here, in this house, but he left clues rather than direct instructions. He believed that whoever found them would have to prove their worthiness." The protagonist felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of a hidden fortune was enticing, but the thought of navigating his father's cryptic legacy was daunting. He wondered what kind of tests his father had devised and what secrets he had taken to the grave. "Do you know where to start?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She shook her head slowly. "I have some ideas, but nothing concrete. Your father was clever, too clever for his own good sometimes. He always had a penchant for puzzles and codes. I suspect you'll need to look closely at the things he treasured, the places he spent the most time. The answers are there, but if you're willing to look." As they sat in the dimly lit room, the protagonist felt the weight of his father's legacy settle heavily on his shoulders. The house, with its creaking floors and whispering walls, held more secrets than he had imagined. He realized that his journey was far from over, it was only beginning. To secure the future of his family, he would have to delve into the past, uncover the hidden clues, and solve the mystery that his father had left behind. The room grew quieter, the silence filled with unspoken thoughts, and the faint rustle of the evening breeze through the old windows. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was determined to face them. For his mother, his grandmother, and himself, he would unravel the enigma of his father's legacy, no matter what darkness he might uncover along the way. The next morning, as the pale dawn light filtered through the thin curtains, the protagonist sat at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hands. The events of the previous night weighed heavily on his mind. The revelation of his father's hidden funds and the cryptic clues left behind had given him a new sense of purpose, yet the path ahead seemed fraught with uncertainty. He took a deep breath and looked around the kitchen. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, peeling at the corners, and the ceiling bore the telltale stains of leaks from the roof above. The house, once a proud symbol of his family's legacy, now stood as a testament to years of neglect and hardship. It needed more than just superficial repairs, it needed a revival. First on his list was the roof. The recent storms had turned the leaks into small waterfalls, and the buckets scattered around the house were a constant reminder of the urgency of the task. He planned to start by inspecting the extent of the damage, gathering the necessary materials, and recruiting some local help if possible. Fixing the roof would be a monumental task, but it was essential for making the house livable again. As he sipped his coffee, his thoughts drifted to his mother and grandmother. His mother's frail condition and his grandmother's stern resilience made him realize how much they depended on him. He needed to find a way to support them, both emotionally and financially. The idea of the hidden funds offered a glimmer of hope, but it wasn't a guaranteed solution. He would have to continue looking for work, perhaps something in town that allowed him to stay close to home while managing the repairs and renovations. The protagonist also reflected on his strained relationship with his family. Years of distance and unresolved issues had created a rift that wouldn't be easily mended. He needed to rebuild trust and communication, especially with his grandmother. Her knowledge of the family's history and her potential insights into his father's secrets could be invaluable. More importantly, he wanted to reconnect on a personal level, to heal the wounds that had festered over the years. He finished his coffee and stood up, feeling a mix of determination and trepidation. There was much to be done, and the days ahead would be filled with hard work and difficult conversations. Yet, for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of direction. He would tackle the repairs, search for clues about the hidden funds, and strive to rebuild his family both physically and emotionally. The protagonist gathered his tools and headed outside to survey the roof. The morning air was crisp, and the sound of birds chirping was a welcome contrast to the silence of the house. As he climbed the ladder and began his inspection, he couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching him, waiting to reveal its secrets. He knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face whatever came his way. Whether it was fixing the roof, uncovering his father's hidden legacy, or mending the fractured bonds with his family, he was determined to succeed. The house, with all its dark corners and hidden stories, was not just a place to live, it was a part of his identity, a link to his past, and a beacon for his future. As he worked, the sense of unease never fully left him. The house had many secrets, and he could feel them lurking just out of sight, waiting to be discovered. But for now, he focused on the tangible task at hand, knowing that each repaired shingle and sealed leak was a step towards restoring not just the house, but his family's fractured life. As the protagonist climbed down from the roof, wiping sweat from his brow, he took a moment to survey the tranquil surroundings. The countryside, with its rolling hills and dense forests, seemed to embrace him in a way the city never had. The distant hum of life in the fields and the gentle rustling of leaves were a far cry from the constant cacophony of the urban jungle. It was in this quiet moment that he realized how deeply he had grown tired of the city. The city, with its towering skyscrapers and endless hustle, had once seemed like the epitome of excitement and opportunity. Every corner held the promise of a new adventure. Every street buzzed with the energy of 1,000 lives intersecting. But now, those same streets felt suffocating. The constant noise, the relentless pace, and the ever-present crowd had worn him down. He had chased after dreams that turned out to be hollow, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever amidst the sea of people. Life in the city had been a blur of deadlines, meetings, and endless social obligations. There was always another task to complete, another person to impress, another bar to visit. The pressure to succeed, to maintain a facade of unending enthusiasm and ambition, had drained him. His apartment, once a sanctuary, had become a prison of stale air and dim lighting, a place where he could never truly rest. Here, in the countryside, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The air was fresh and carried the scent of pine and earth. The sky, vast and unbroken, stretched out above him in a way that made the city's skyline seem claustrophobic. There was a rhythm to life here that resonated with something deep within him. The simple act of chopping wood or mending a fence felt meaningful, a stark contrast to the endless cycle of emails and reports that had once dominated his days. The protagonist leaned against the ladder, closing his eyes for a moment. He could hear the distant murmur of his mother and grandmother inside the house, the faint clatter of dishes being washed, the hum of life moving at its own, slower pace. He hadn't realized how much he missed this until now, the sense of connection to a place and its people, the feeling of being grounded. The city had offered him opportunities, but it had also taken its toll. The constant striving, the endless competition, had left him weary and hollow. In contrast, the countryside offered a chance to reconnect with what truly mattered: family, nature, and a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to material success. He understood now why his father had chosen to build their family home here, away from the chaos of urban life. As he opened his eyes and took in the serene landscape, he felt a renewed sense of determination. The house needed work, the family had wounds that needed healing, and he still had to find a way to support them. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The city had been an important chapter in his life, but it was time to turn the page and embrace a new beginning. The protagonist knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still many challenges to face, secrets to uncover, and relationships to mend. But here, in the quiet embrace of the countryside, he felt a strength and clarity that the city had never given him. He was ready to face whatever came next, with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. As the protagonist leaned against the fence post, staring out across the fields bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, a pang of regret gripped his heart. He had spent years chasing after success and recognition in the bustling city, never fully realizing how much he was missing back home. In the city, life had been a whirlwind of ambition and achievement. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities to prove himself in the competitive corporate world. He had climbed the career ladder with determination, pushing himself to excel in a relentless pursuit of success. But amidst the boardroom meetings and business deals, he had inadvertently neglected the ties that bound him to his roots. Now, standing in the quiet solitude of the countryside, memories flooded back to him, fragments of moments spent with family that had once seemed inconsequential, but now carried a weight of missed opportunities. He recalled the evenings he had hurried through, too preoccupied with work to truly engage in conversations with his mother. The weekends he had spent away, chasing after deadlines instead of sitting around the kitchen table, sharing stories with his grandmother. The house, with its creaky floorboards and sunlit corners, held echoes of laughter and sorrow that he had been absent for. He remembered his father's proud smile when he had first shown him the blueprints for the family home, a dream realized through sweat and sacrifice. Yet, he had been too consumed by his career aspirations to appreciate the significance of that moment, too focused on the next promotion to slow down and cherish the bond they shared. His siblings, too, had grown distant over the years. Birthdays missed, anniversaries overlooked each passing year had created rifts that he now longed to mend. The thought of his younger sister's graduation, celebrated with a hurried phone call instead of a heartfelt embrace, filled him with remorse. How many milestones had he let slip by, too blinded by ambition to realize their importance? In the city, success had seemed like the ultimate goal, the measure of a life well lived. But here, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the countryside, he realized the true cost of that pursuit. He had sacrificed moments of joy and connection in exchange for accolades and accomplishments that now felt hollow. The protagonist closed his eyes, letting the cool evening breeze wash over him. He made a silent vow to himself to bridge the gap that had grown between him and his family, to mend the frayed threads of relationships that had been neglected for too long. He knew that it wouldn't be easy, that rebuilding trust and closeness would take time. But standing there, amidst the rustling leaves and fading light, he felt a sense of clarity and purpose that he had been missing for years. The city had offered him opportunities and ambitions, but it had also blurred his vision, distorting his priorities. Now, as he looked out at the familiar landscape of his childhood, he understood that true fulfillment lay not in the corner office or the next big project, but in the simple moments shared with loved ones, in the bonds that transcended time and distance. With a newfound determination, he turned towards the house, ready to take the first step towards reconciliation. The road ahead would be challenging, fraught with emotions and uncertainties. Yet he faced it with a resolve born from the realization that some opportunities, once missed, could still be reclaimed. After the long journey back from the city, burdened with heavy bags filled with essentials he had forgotten to pack, the protagonist finally arrived home. The air was thick with a mixture of nostalgia and apprehension as he unlocked the door and stepped into the familiar warmth of the house. Exhausted and hungry, he intended to unpack and dive into the long list of tasks awaiting him. Yet, As the clock ticked past noon and the sun reached its zenith, fatigue washed over him like a tidal wave. The weight of sleepless nights and restless thoughts caught up with him, pulling him into a deep slumber that seemed to stretch on endlessly. When he finally stirred, it was to the eerie silence of the darkened room. The house, usually bustling with the sounds of everyday life, now seemed unnervingly quiet. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, casting elongated shadows across the floorboards. The clock on the wall ticked solemnly, marking the passing hours in a rhythm that felt out of sync with his own fragmented sense of time. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, he glanced at the untouched bags strewn by the doorway, reminders of tasks left undone, responsibilities left unfulfilled. Guilt gnawed at him as he realized how little he had accomplished since returning. The day had slipped away unnoticed, leaving him stranded in a limbo between exhaustion and urgency. Fumbling for a sense of direction in the disorienting darkness, he stumbled towards the kitchen, guided by the faint glow of the moonlight filtering through the window. The silence enveloped him like a shroud as he mechanically prepared a simple meal, the clatter of utensils echoing in the empty room. Each movement felt heavy with the weight of missed opportunities, a stark reminder of the distance he had allowed to grow between himself and the life he once knew. As he ate in solitude, the taste of home-cooked food offered a fleeting sense of comfort amidst the turmoil of emotions. Thoughts raced through his mind of the tasks left undone, of the promises he had yet to fulfill. The ache of fatigue was matched only by the ache of regret, each amplifying the other in a haunting symphony of introspection. Outside, the night pressed in, its stillness a stark contrast to the relentless pace of the city he had left behind. The city, with its neon lights and bustling streets, now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the stark reality of the present moment. Here, in the quiet embrace of his home, he confronted the unsettling truth of his own vulnerability, his own limitations. With each passing minute, the weight of responsibility grew heavier, pressing down on him like an unyielding burden. Yet, amidst the shadows and silence, a flicker of determination sparked within him. Tomorrow, he vowed silently, tomorrow he would rise with renewed purpose. Tomorrow he would begin the daunting task of rebuilding what had been lost, of reclaiming the life he had once known. But for now, in the hushed stillness of the night, he allowed himself a moment of respite, a fragile pause in the relentless march of time. Tomorrow could wait. Tonight he would rest, gathering strength for the challenges that lay ahead in the eerie, unsettling calm of his once familiar home. Wandering through the house in the enveloping darkness, the protagonist's footsteps echoed softly against the cold floorboards. Memories stirred within him like restless spirits, awakening childhood fears that had long been buried beneath the layers of adulthood. As he moved from room to room, the air seemed to thicken with an unspoken presence, a lingering sensation that whispered of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, familiar corners took on unfamiliar shapes, casting eerie silhouettes that danced along the walls. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind outside, seemed to conspire together in a symphony of unsettling sounds. The house, once a sanctuary of warmth and familiarity, now harbored a quiet unease that prickled at his skin. Childhood memories resurfaced unbidden, like ghosts from the past eager to remind him of forgotten fears. He remembered the nights when darkness crept in, turning familiar spaces into ominous landscapes where imagination ran wild. Shadows became monstrous shapes, lurking in every obscured nook and cranny, waiting to pounce upon his unsuspecting vulnerability. The sensation of being watched persisted, intensifying with each step he took. Was it merely his mind playing tricks, conjuring phantoms from the recesses of memory? Or was there something more, something palpable yet elusive, that lurked just beyond his line of sight? He paused, gripping the banister of the staircase with a clammy hand, half expecting to hear the whispered breath of a specter from the past. The air grew colder, chilling him to the bone, despite the warmth of his own breath misting in front of him. Shadows stretched and twisted, taking on forms that seemed to shift and retreat as he approached. As he ventured deeper into the heart of the house, he found himself drawn inexorably towards the attic, a place steeped in stories of forgotten relics and whispered secrets. The staircase groaned beneath his weight, protesting each tentative step he took. The attic door loomed ahead, a portal to a realm where time seemed suspended, where echoes of the past mingled with the present in an unsettling dance. With trembling hands, he pushed open the door, revealing a space bathed in inky darkness. Dust motes danced in the faint beam of his flashlight, casting ephemeral halos in the still air. Boxes stacked high like silent sentinels stood guard over forgotten treasures and relics of a bygone era. And yet, amid the quiet solitude of the attic, he sensed a presence, a subtle shift in the air, a whispered sigh that stirred the silence. His heart raced as he scanned the shadows, half expecting to glimpse a figure from his distant memories. The weight of childhood fears bore down upon him, mingling with the chill that clung to the attic's confines. In that moment, he realized that the ghosts of the past were not mere figments of imagination but echoes of experiences that had shaped him. They lingered still, woven into the very fabric of the house, waiting to be acknowledged and laid to rest. With a deep breath, he resolved to confront these phantoms, to unravel their mysteries, and find solace amidst the shadows that had haunted him for so long. As he descended from the attic, the darkness seemed to lose its hold, retreating to the corners where memories lay dormant. The house sighed around him, as if exhaling a collective breath held for years. And though the night outside whispered of mysteries yet uncovered, he walked with newfound resolve, carrying with him the echoes of the past as he navigated the uncertain path ahead. In the stillness of the night, the house seemed to hold its breath, enveloped in a shroud of darkness that accentuated every creak and rustle. The protagonist, lost in the labyrinth of his thoughts, found solace in the quiet solitude of his room. The faint glow of a bedside lamp cast a gentle pool of light upon the worn pages of a book, its covers weathered by time and countless readings. The air was cool and heavy with the weight of memories that clung to the walls like shadows. Outside, the world slept, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding within the confines of the old house. It was in this fragile tranquility that a sudden noise shattered the delicate equilibrium, a soft footfall on the staircase. Startled from his reverie, the protagonist glanced up, his heart skipping a beat as he saw a figure ascending the stairs. In the dim light, it took a moment for recognition to dawn upon him, a figure cloaked in the familiar silhouette of his mother, her form illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through the window. "Mother," his voice trembled slightly, a mixture of relief and unease intertwining in his words. She turned, startled by his presence, her eyes wide with surprise before recognition softened her features. The brief moment of fear that flickered across her face mirrored his own, a testament to the tension that hung between them, unspoken yet palpable. "I'm sorry," he stammered, guilt coloring his voice as he struggled to find the right words. "I didn't mean to startle you." Her response was gentle, a soothing balm to the raw nerves that jangled within him. "It's all right, dear. I just didn't expect anyone to be up at this hour." Her voice carried a hint of weariness, tempered with maternal concern that tugged at his heartstrings. Desperate to dispel the lingering awkwardness, he gestured towards the book in his hands, its pages open but forgotten. "I couldn't sleep," he offered lamely, his attempt at casual conversation falling flat in the charged atmosphere. A flicker of understanding passed between them, unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. She nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken struggles that bound them together in their fragile dance of familial closeness. With a gentle smile, she retreated down the stairs, leaving him once more to the solitude of his thoughts. The staircase creaked softly under her weight, a familiar sound that echoed the passage of time within the old house. Left alone with his thoughts, the protagonist returned to the sanctuary of his book, its pages offering refuge from the unsettling encounter. Yet, beneath the surface of the printed words, a sense of unease lingered, a reminder of the unexpected meeting that had briefly illuminated the darkness of the night. As he read, the words blurred before his eyes, mingling with the echoes of footsteps on the stairs and the fleeting glimpse of his mother's startled expression. The house settled into a hushed calm, its secrets buried beneath layers of history and memory. In that fleeting moment of connection and discord, the protagonist found himself grappling with emotions long suppressed, confronting the complexities of family ties that bound them together, even as they navigated the shadows of their shared history. And as the night wore on, the darkness outside yielded to the tentative light of dawn, casting a fragile glow upon the uncertain path, that lay ahead. The night draped the old house in a veil of eerie stillness, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves outside and the faint hum of distant traffic. Inside, the protagonist found himself ensconced in his room, a sanctuary amidst the unsettling quietude that seemed to amplify every sound and shadow. As the hours wore on, an unsettling sensation crept over him, an inexplicable feeling of déjà vu tinged with unease. It was as though he had been here before, in this exact moment, listening intently to the gentle creaks and murmurs of the house settling into the night. Yet, amidst the familiar, there arose a disconcerting anomaly, a soft, cautious tapping at the door. His heart skipped a beat, instinctively recoiling from the intrusion that echoed through the silence. Was it a figment of his imagination, a trick of the mind spun by the late hour and the weight of solitude? Or was there truly something beyond his door, seeking entrance into his sanctuary? Fingers trembling, he hesitated, caught in a liminal space between curiosity and fear. The tapping persisted, insistent yet faint, as if beckoning him to unravel the mystery that hovered just beyond his reach. Each sound reverberated through the hollows of the house, amplifying the sense of dread that coiled in the pit of his stomach. Memories of childhood fears surfaced, whispered tales of things unseen that lurked in the darkness, waiting for an opportunity to breach the fragile barrier between reality and the unknown. His breath caught in his throat, the air thick with anticipation and a primal instinct urging caution. Summoning courage, he approached the door with measured steps, his hand trembling as it reached for the handle. The wood felt cool and smooth beneath his touch, a stark contrast to the feverish pulse that thrummed through his veins. With a hesitant breath, he swung the door open, expecting to confront the spectral apparition of his imagination. But the hallway lay before him, shrouded in the dim glow of moonlight filtering through a nearby window. There was nothing out of place, no sign of an intruder or an unseen presence. Confusion clouded his thoughts as he scanned the corridor, searching for answers that eluded him in the murky depths of the night. Yet as he stood there, bathed in the uncertain light, a realization dawned upon him, a realization that perhaps the true source of his fear lay not in the shadows that danced along the walls, but within the recesses of his own mind. The tapping, the sense of déjà vu, they were manifestations of deeper anxieties, echoes of unresolved fears that lingered like ghosts in the corners of his consciousness. With a heavy sigh, he closed the door, retreating back into the sanctuary of his room. The night resumed its quiet vigil, the mysterious tapping fading into the background like a half-remembered dream. And as sleep eventually claimed him, he found solace in the knowledge that sometimes the most unsettling mysteries are those we carry within ourselves, waiting to be illuminated by the light of understanding. With resolve etched upon his features, the protagonist gripped the flickering flame of the lighter, its feeble glow casting elongated shadows across the hallway as he ventured forth into the labyrinthine corridors of his childhood home. Each step echoed softly against the aged floorboards, a testament to the passage of time that had left its mark upon the once familiar walls. Guided by the trembling illumination, he navigated through the silent expanse, memories intertwining with the present as he approached the door to his childhood room. Swallowing against the lump in his throat, he pushed it open cautiously, the hinges groaning in protest after years of disuse. Inside, the room unfolded before him like a tableau frozen in time. His gaze swept over the shelves adorned with dusty books and forgotten trinkets, relics of a bygone era when innocence reigned supreme. The air hung heavy with the scent of antiquity, mingling with the faint mustiness that permeated the neglected space. His eyes fell upon the crib nestled in the corner, adorned with faded linens that whispered tales of tender slumber and whispered lullabies. Beside it, a collection of weathered toys lay scattered upon the floor, their once vibrant colors muted by the passage of years. Each object seemed to hold a silent vigil, bearing witness to the fleeting passage of childhood and the secrets it had cradled within these walls. As the flame flickered in his grasp, casting dancing shadows upon the walls, he felt a chill ripple through his spine, a sensation born not of the physical cold, but of an intangible presence that seemed to stir in the corners of his perception. The room exuded a palpable nostalgia, tinged with an unsettling undercurrent that whispered of forgotten fears and buried truths. With trembling hands, he traced the contours of a beloved toy, its once familiar features now softened by time and neglect. Memories flooded his mind like shards of fractured glass, reflecting moments of joy and innocence that had long since faded into the recesses of memory. Yet beneath the veneer of nostalgia lay a subtle unease and nagging suspicion that not all was as it seemed within these hallowed confines. The flickering flame illuminated corners long shrouded in shadow, revealing glimpses of a past that had been meticulously preserved yet obscured by the passage of years. Each flicker of light seemed to unveil a new layer of mystery, prompting him to question the truths he had held dear and the secrets that had lain dormant within these walls. And as he stood there, bathed in the wavering glow of the lighter, he realized that his journey into the depths of his childhood home had not merely been an exploration of physical space, but a reckoning with the ghosts of his past. The room bore witness to a narrative woven from threads of longing and loss, its walls echoing with the whispers of forgotten dreams and shattered illusions. With a heavy heart, he extinguished the flame, allowing darkness to reclaim the room once more. Yet, in the silence that followed, he carried with him the indelible imprint of his exploration, a mosaic of emotions and revelations that had illuminated the hidden recesses of his soul. For in the quiet solitude of that moment, amidst the relics of his youth, he had come to understand that sometimes the most haunting mysteries are those that lie within ourselves, waiting to be unveiled in the flickering shadows of remembrance. The sensation of emptiness pervaded the once familiar rooms of the old house, casting a pall of loneliness over its silent corridors. The protagonist, now standing in the midst of this desolate space, felt the weight of solitude press upon his shoulders like an invisible burden. It was as though the very walls echoed with the hollow ache of abandonment, amplifying the eerie stillness that enveloped him. Despite his attempts to dismiss the sounds as mere figments of an overactive imagination, unease clung to him like a persistent shadow. The creaking of floorboards beneath his feet, the faint rustling of curtains stirred by an unseen draft, all conspired to feed his growing apprehension. Each subtle noise, once dismissed as ordinary household murmurs, now seemed imbued with an ominous significance. He paced restlessly through the dimly lit rooms, his mind a labyrinth of unsettling thoughts. Memories of happier times mingled with darker reflections, blurring the line between reality and imagined horrors. The air felt charged with an inexplicable tension, as though something unseen lurked just beyond the threshold of his perception. In the heart of this eerie stillness, he grappled with a profound sense of isolation, a stark reminder of the solitude that had settled upon his life like a shroud. The emptiness of the house mirrored the void within him, stirring dormant fears and unspoken anxieties that clawed at the edges of his consciousness. Despite his rationalizations, a lingering unease persisted, gnawing at his composure with relentless persistence. Each passing moment only deepened his sense of foreboding, casting long shadows across his fragile resolve. The boundaries between rationality and irrational fear blurred, leaving him stranded in a twilight realm where reality and imagination intertwined in unsettling harmony. As the night stretched on, the house seemed to exhale a melancholy sigh, a haunting lament for the echoes of a life once lived within its walls. And in the solitude of that haunted hour, the protagonist stood alone, confronting not only the spectral presence of the house, but also the specter of his own loneliness and the unsettling truths it whispered in the dark. The night had descended upon the old house like a shroud, wrapping its eerie silence around the protagonist as he navigated the dimly lit corridors. It was in this suffocating stillness that he first became aware of the unsettling sounds of faint rustling, like the scurrying of tiny feet across the wooden floorboards. At first he dismissed it as the typical noises of an aging house settling into its nocturnal rhythms. Yet, as he ventured deeper into the darkness, the sounds grew more pronounced, more purposeful. Each creak of the floor seemed to echo with a chilling intent, as though unseen entities were orchestrating a sinister symphony. His heart quickened with each step, the air thickening around him with unspoken dread. Then, as if emerging from the shadows themselves, he caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, swift and elusive, skittering across the periphery of his vision. His breath caught in his throat as he strained to make sense of what he had seen. There, amidst the gloom, something resembling a small paw, or perhaps a diminutive hand, darted out of sight, leaving behind a trail of inexplicable terror. Fear took hold of him like icy tendrils, paralyzing his thoughts with its chilling grip. Rational explanations eluded him as his mind raced with primal instincts, warning of unseen dangers lurking in the darkened corners. The once familiar contours of the house now seemed distorted, imbued with an otherworldly presence that defied comprehension. In the midst of this spectral encounter, time seemed to stretch into an eternity of uncertainty. Shadows danced malevolently on the walls, casting grotesque shapes that mirrored the turmoil within his own psyche. The sensation of being watched intensified, a phantom gaze boring into his very soul with unrelenting scrutiny. With trembling hands, he fumbled for a light source, a flickering candle, a trembling match to pierce the veil of darkness and expose the source of his mounting dread. Yet, each illumination cast only fleeting glimpses into the abyss, revealing nothing but the palpable emptiness that surrounded him. As he stood there, grappling with the surreal and the inexplicable, a profound realization dawned upon him. It was not merely the house that harbored secrets in its forgotten recesses, but the shadows themselves seemed to whisper of ancient fears and restless spirits. And in that moment of clarity, he understood that some mysteries were not meant to be unraveled, lest they consume the fragile sanity of those who dared to confront them in the unforgiving embrace of the night. In a frantic bid to escape the encroaching dread, he fled into the familiarity of his room, slamming the door shut behind him with trembling hands. The darkness within offered a deceptive sanctuary, yet the shadows seemed to cling to him like a suffocating cloak. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat reverberating through the silence that enveloped him. Desperation drove him to search for the comfort of a flickering light. His fingers fumbled in his pockets, finding the familiar weight of a matchbox. With trembling hands, he struck a match against its rough surface, the flame erupting into existence with a sputtering intensity. The warm glow momentarily chased away the cold tendrils of fear that gripped his senses. Sitting on the floor, back pressed against the cool wall, he sought solace in the feeble light of the match. Its wavering flame danced in the darkness, casting erratic shadows that seemed to mock his attempts at reassurance. He tried to convince himself that it was all in his mind, a product of an overactive imagination fueled by the eerie ambience of the house. Yet, despite his rationalizations, an unsettling feeling lingered, an unshakable conviction that something inexplicable lurked within the very walls that surrounded him. The air itself felt charged with an unseen presence, as though the house held secrets too ancient and too malevolent to be fully comprehended by mortal minds. The match burned down to his fingertips, its glow faltering as the reality of his isolation settled in. He was alone, surrounded by the oppressive weight of the night and the unsettling awareness of his vulnerability. In that moment of solitude, his thoughts raced, searching for a semblance of reason amidst the encroaching chaos. As he sat there, grappling with his fear and the palpable silence that seemed to pulse around him, he realized that he could no longer deny the undeniable. The events of the night had irrevocably altered his perception of the house, casting it in a new, ominous light. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside, now carried an ominous significance, a harbinger of forces beyond his understanding, lurking just beyond the threshold of his fragile courage. And so, in the flickering glow of a spent match, he found himself at a crossroads between disbelief and acceptance. The shadows continued to dance in the corners of his vision, a silent testament to the mysteries that lay buried within the heart of the house. With a resigned sigh, he extinguished the match, plunging himself once more into the engulfing darkness, where the line between reality and illusion blurred with each fleeting breath. In the cold light of morning, the house seemed to exhale a reluctant sigh, as if releasing the tension that had gripped its inhabitants through the night. But for Marina, the dawn brought only the escalation of her inner turmoil, a storm that broke with sudden and startling intensity. With wild eyes and disheveled hair, Marina burst out into the yard, her cries cutting through the quiet morning air like a knife. Her voice echoed off the weathered walls, filling the space with a primal fear that seemed to resonate with the very bones of the house itself. She stumbled over uneven ground, pursued not by physical entities, but by the invisible specters of her own anguish. From the shadows emerged her grandmother, a stoic figure whose presence seemed to command the respect of the house's ancient timbers. Wrinkled hands gently grasped Marina's trembling shoulders, guiding her back towards the shelter of the house. The older woman's voice, though soft, carried the weight of authority born from decades of weathering storms, both literal and metaphorical. "Marina, calm yourself," her grandmother murmured, her words a soothing balm against the girl's raw nerves. "There is no need for such hysteria. Come inside." Reluctantly, Marina allowed herself to be led, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she cast wary glances back at the yard. Her eyes briefly met those of the protagonist, who stood at a respectful distance, a silent observer to the morning's tumultuous scene. In that fleeting exchange, there passed a silent understanding, a recognition of shared unease in the face of forces beyond their comprehension. As Marina disappeared into the shadows of the house, the grandmother cast a disapproving glance towards the protagonist, her expression a silent reproach for the unrest that seemed to have taken root within the walls of her home. Her gaze held a silent warning, a suggestion that some truths were better left undisturbed, their shadows unexplored. And so the morning wore on, the echoes of Marina's distress fading into the fabric of the house, leaving behind an uneasy stillness that belied the turmoil simmering just beneath the surface. The protagonist lingered in the yard, haunted by the memory of Marina's desperate flight and the unspoken tension that now hung heavy in the air. In that moment, amid the quiet morning chill and the watchful gaze of the house's guardian, the protagonist understood with a sinking certainty that their presence had stirred something dormant, a restlessness that now threatened to engulf them all in its dark embrace. And as the day wore on, the shadows within the house seemed to deepen, concealing secrets that whispered of unseen hands and restless spirits, waiting patiently for their moment to reveal themselves once more. In the hushed confines of the house, where shadows seemed to pool in every corner, the protagonist strained to decipher the murmured exchanges filtering through the thin walls. From the adjoining room, the grandmother's voice carried a tone of gentle insistence, a steady stream of soothing words meant to quell the storm raging within Marina's troubled mind. "Marina, my dear, you must calm yourself," the grandmother urged, her voice a measured cadence against the backdrop of morning's fragile peace. Marina's response, however, was a disconcerting counterpoint, a disjointed chorus of whispers and half-formed phrases that seemed to echo with a disquieting resonance. Her words, though indistinct, held an unsettling quality, as if they were fragments of a tale spun from the darker recesses of her thoughts. Meanwhile, the mother of the protagonist, confined to her sickbed, interrupted the uneasy tableau with a plaintive request conveyed through the intermediary of the grandmother. Her voice, though weakened by illness, carried an air of resignation and a touch of sorrow, as she relayed that she would not be joining them for breakfast. "Please tell them," her voice wavered slightly, the weight of her absence palpable even through the walls that separated them. The protagonist stood in the corridor, caught between the currents of distress that flowed through the house, the grandmother's steadfast reassurances, Marina's unsettling utterances, and the quiet lament of a mother too frail to partake in the morning rituals that once bound them together. Each thread woven into the fabric of this eerie morning painted a portrait of a family teetering on the brink of understanding, yet held back by the specters of uncertainty and unspoken fears. As the morning light filtered through the windows, casting elongated shadows across the worn floorboards, the protagonist felt a chill settle deep within. It was not merely the physical cold that gnawed at their bones, but the chill of unspoken truths and unseen forces that seemed to gather strength in the quiet interludes between each whispered conversation. And so, the protagonist remained a silent witness to the unfolding drama within the house, their own thoughts mirroring the disquietude that pulsed through the very heart of this once familiar sanctuary. In the midst of whispered conversations and unvoiced fears, they grappled with the unsettling realization that something far more profound than mere words or gestures lurked beneath the surface, a haunting presence that threatened to unravel the fragile tapestry of their family's existence. In the quiet sanctum of the grandmother's study, the protagonist found themselves summoned, the heavy air thick with reproach and unspoken tension. The room, draped in shadows despite the midday sun, seemed to amplify the gravity of the impending conversation. The grandmother's stern countenance, etched with lines of age and worry, betrayed her concern for matters deeper than the immediate transgression. "Young man," her voice carried a weight that resonated through the room. "I found your indiscretions cannot be ignored any longer." The accusation hung in the air, accusing the protagonist of contributing to the decline of their mother's fragile health. The guilt laced through the grandmother's words like an unbreakable thread. Memories of a strict upbringing flooded back the cellar, where reprimands were meted out, lessons etched in the darkness where the scent of damp earth mingled with fear. The grandmother's admonishment cut through the silence, each syllable a reminder of the consequences of their actions. As the conversation drew to a close, the protagonist's gaze fell upon the grandmother's hand, a hand that clutched a broken lighter, its fractured form a stark contrast to the authority she wielded. In that fleeting moment, the broken lighter became a poignant symbol, triggering a cascade of memories from childhood: the stern lectures, the disciplinary measures taken to enforce discipline, and the harsh reality of expectations within the confines of the family home. The realization struck with the force of revelation, illuminating the interconnectedness of past and present, where old wounds and buried grievances lay dormant beneath the surface. With a nod of acknowledgement, the protagonist withdrew from the study, leaving behind the weight of unspoken truths and unresolved tensions. The echo of footsteps in the hallway mirrored the cadence of their racing thoughts, grappling with the unsettling blend of guilt and nostalgia that lingered in the wake of the grandmother's reprimand. As they retreated into the dimly lit corridor, the broken lighter remained a silent testament to the complexities of familial bonds, a beacon in the darkness that illuminated not only the fragility of their mother's health, but also the intricate web of expectations and obligations that defined their shared history. And amidst the shadows of memory and regret, the protagonists found themselves once again confronting the ghosts of their upbringing, grappling with the daunting realization that some scars never truly fade. In the dimly lit confines of the family home, the atmosphere thickened with tension as the grandmother's voice rang out sternly. Her accusatory gaze bore into the protagonist, carrying with it a mix of disappointment and palpable disdain for the vice that had crept into their sanctum. "Young man," her voice cut through the stagnant air, "your reckless habit is no secret. It has not gone unnoticed how it affects your mother." The accusation hung heavy between them, each word laden with the weight of maternal concern and the sting of personal reproach. The grandmother, a pillar of unwavering discipline and authority, stood firm in her condemnation of the smoking that had seeped into the household, tarnishing the pristine image of familial tranquility she had strived to maintain. "You dare to pollute this house with your smoke," her words dripped with contempt, "and expect us to bear the consequences? Your mother's health is fragile enough without your thoughtless actions." The protagonist, caught in the grip of familial scrutiny and the suffocating guilt of their own habits, felt the weight of their grandmother's disappointment press upon their shoulders. Memories of earlier admonitions surfaced, the strict reprimands and the unyielding enforcement of household rules, all reinforcing the gravity of the situation at hand. As the grandmother continued to admonish, her disapproval mingled with the pungent scent of disapproval, a constant reminder of the boundaries crossed and the trust betrayed. The accusation echoed through the corridors of their mind, resonating with the unsettling realization of their own culpability in the deterioration of their mother's fragile health. With a heavy heart and a bowed head, the protagonist absorbed the full impact of their grandmother's words, grappling with the realization that their actions had not only jeopardized familial harmony, but had also deepened the rifts within the fragile fabric of their shared existence. In that moment, amidst the weight of accusation and the acrid scent of disappointment, they stood at the precipice of introspection, confronted with the haunting specter of their own shortcomings. And as the grandmother's reproach lingered in the air like an unspoken decree, the protagonist found themselves grappling with the unsettling truth that some wounds, inflicted within the confines of familial duty and expectation, never truly healed. In the hazy corridors of memory, the protagonist revisits the chilling scenes of their childhood, where discipline wielded a heavy hand and consequences were etched in the shadows of a dimly lit cellar. It was in those austere depths that the most haunting recollections of their grandmother's reprimands lay buried. The memory unfolds with a clarity that belies its age, transporting them back to a time when innocence collided with the unforgiving expectations of familial order. The protagonist, then a child of tender years, had incurred the wrath of their grandmother for an act of unwitting mischief, a defaced book, marred by the careless strokes of a curious hand. The descent into the cellar, shrouded in the chill of reprimand, marked the threshold where fear coiled in anticipation of punishment. As the heavy door creaked open, revealing the damp and musty confines below, the protagonist's heart sank with the weight of impending consequence. Each step down the creaking stairs echoed the toll of apprehension, their youthful imagination already conjuring the specter of punishment that awaited. Within the cellar's dim embrace, where shadows danced with malevolent intent, the stern figure of their grandmother stood sentinel over justice meted with unwavering severity. Her voice, a cold whisper in the silence, pronounced judgment upon the transgression, condemning the defiled tome as a sacrilege against the sanctity of knowledge and discipline. The punishment, etched now in the protagonist's memory with stark clarity, was not merely a correction of behavior, but a crucible of fear and penance. Forced to kneel before the decrepit shelves that housed generations of wisdom, the child felt the weight of guilt mingle with the chill of solitude. The grandmother's words, sharp as flint, sparked against the backdrop of flickering candlelight, casting long shadows that danced like accusing fingers upon the cold stone walls. As the minutes stretched into eternity, the child's tears mingled with the dusty air, each drop a testament to the lesson learned in the darkness of that subterranean sanctuary. It was an ordeal that left an indelible mark upon their tender psyche, a scar of remembrance that echoed through the years, a reminder of the price paid for youthful indiscretion and the unyielding demands of familial expectation. And even now, amidst the passage of time and the veneer of adulthood, the protagonist shudders at the memory of that solitary confinement in the cellar, where discipline and fear coalesced into a haunting specter that lingers still in the recesses of their consciousness, a testament to the indomitable power of childhood fears and the enduring legacy of familial discipline. At the tender age of 11, the protagonist found themselves ensnared in the cold embrace of their grandmother's cellar, a place where darkness pooled like ink beneath forgotten corners. It was an afternoon that began innocently enough, filled with the innocent curiosity of a child seeking adventure amidst the labyrinthine recesses of familial solitude. The cellar door, heavy and imposing, swung shut behind them with an ominous finality, sealing them within a world where shadows whispered secrets of forgotten jars and cobwebbed relics. The air, thick with the scent of must and neglect, clung to their skin like a clammy shroud as they tentatively ventured deeper into the murky depths. Their quest, sparked by a craving for the forbidden sweetness of grandmother's preserves, quickly soured into a nightmare of confinement. The jars, neatly arranged on sagging shelves that groaned under the weight of time, stood as mute sentinels guarding their prized contents. Yet, despite their youthful determination, the lids proved obstinate, refusing to yield to trembling fingers that sought solace in familiarity. With each futile attempt, the cellar seemed to constrict around them, its oppressive darkness a palpable presence that gnawed at their courage. Panic, an unwelcome companion in the chill of solitude, threaded its icy tendrils through their veins as the realization of their predicament sank deeper. The muffled sounds of the household above, once a distant comfort, now mocked their plight with indifferent detachment. Hours crawled by like reluctant snails, each minute stretching into an eternity of apprehension and regret. The child, consumed by the primal fear of abandonment and the specter of their grandmother's disapproval, pressed trembling palms against the unyielding door. Their cries, swallowed by the unfeeling earth beneath, echoed hollowly in the confines of their solitary prison. In the suffocating darkness, where time blurred into a surreal tapestry of fear and longing, the child clung to flickering hope like a fragile lifeline. The prospect of freedom, once taken for granted in the sunlit world above, now shimmered tantalizingly beyond reach, a distant beacon obscured by the oppressive gloom. As exhaustion mingled with despair, they sank to the cold stone floor, their small frame trembling with the weight of unresolved anguish. Tears, silent emissaries of their silent plight, traced lonely paths down dirt-streaked cheeks as they huddled in the shadowy embrace of their self-imposed exile. It was a crucible of fear and solitude etched in the child's memory with the sharpness of a knife's edge, a testament to the fragility of innocence and the chilling embrace of familial discipline. And though time would soften the jagged edges of that harrowing afternoon, the specter of the cellar would forever haunt the recesses of their consciousness, a ghostly reminder of the price paid for a child's curious defiance and the unforgiving dictates of familial authority. In the dim recesses of the cellar, where shadows coiled like serpents in wait, The protagonist's ears strained against the oppressive silence. It was a silence punctuated only by the unsettling susurrations that echoed like spectral whispers through the labyrinthine corridors of forgotten relics and musty solitude. The sounds, reminiscent of stealthy movements and faint scrabbling, sparked an instinctual terror within them, a primal fear that gripped their heart like icy talons. Each rustle and shuffle seemed to carve deeper into the marrow of their unease, conjuring visions of unseen horrors lurking just beyond the reach of feeble candlelight. Memories, like shards of fractured glass, pierced through the fog of dread. They recalled their mother's solemn warnings, whispered in hushed tones of father's desperate battle against the insidious plague of rats that plagued the very foundations of their home. Poison, she had murmured, her eyes shadowed by the weight of unspoken fears, yet the specter of those elusive vermin persisted, gnawing at the edges of their consciousness. In the oppressive stillness of the cellar's embrace, where the air tasted of dust and decay, every creak and shuffle became a sinister symphony, a chorus of unseen terrors that prowled in the unseen recesses of the cellar's murky domain. The flickering candlelight, their only companion in the suffocating dark, cast trembling shadows that danced malevolently on the cold stone walls. As their pulse quickened and breath caught in shallow gasps, the cellar seemed to contract around them, its walls closing in like the jaws of some primordial beast. Their fingers, slick with clammy sweat, clutched at the rough-hewn stone as if seeking solace in the unyielding solidity of their prison. Outside, the world carried on, oblivious to the silent battle waged within the confines of the cellar's forgotten sanctum. Yet within those echoing chambers, the child's fear festered, a spectral presence that whispered of ancient terrors and whispered secrets. And so, amidst the labyrinthine corridors of their own trepidation, they clung to the flickering candlelight, a fragile sentinel against the encroaching darkness and the elusive specter of their father's silent war against the unseen foes that haunted their darkest fears. In the suffocating embrace of the cellar, where shadows danced like malevolent spirits, the protagonist's senses were heightened to a fever pitch. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and every creak and rustle amplified into a symphony of dread. Amidst the oppressive darkness, a faint sound stirred, a subtle whisper that slithered through the silence like a serpent in the grass. At first, it was a distant echo, barely registering above the pounding of their own heart. But then it grew louder, closer, until it seemed to materialize into a tangible presence. Their breath caught in their throat as they strained to discern the source of faint, rhythmic rasping, accompanied by a slow, deliberate exhalation that sent shivers down their spine. The cellar seemed to contract around them, its walls closing in, as if conspiring with the encroaching darkness to suffocate their very soul. Then, without warning, it touched them, a chilling sensation, like icy tendrils grazing their skin. Fear coiled around their heart like a constrictor, squeezing tighter with each passing second. They dared not move, paralyzed by the primal terror that gripped them in its cold embrace. The dread creature's presence lingered, a malevolent specter in the abyss of the cellar's gloom. Its breath, heavy and labored, echoed in the silence, a haunting reminder of their vulnerability in the face of the unknown. Every nerve screamed in protest, every instinct urging flight, yet they remained rooted to the spot, captive to their own terror. In that fleeting moment of contact, time stood still, and eternity compressed into a heartbeat, where fear and curiosity intertwined in a macabre dance. The cellar's shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, concealing secrets that whispered of ancient horrors and forgotten nightmares. And as quickly as it had come, the presence receded, a phantom retreating into the labyrinthine depths, leaving the protagonist shaken but alive. Their mind reeled, grappling with the surreal encounter that had transcended the boundaries of their understanding. They knew then, with a chilling certainty, that the cellar held secrets darker than mere shadows, that within its depths lurked entities beyond comprehension, waiting to stir from their timeless slumber and haunt the unwary soul once more. In the recesses of memory, a chilling tableau persists from childhood, a time when innocence was shattered by the icy grip of fear. It was a day etched in the protagonist's mind with the indelible ink of terror, a day when they found themselves trapped in the suffocating embrace of the cellar. The descent into darkness had been swift and disorienting, each step echoing like a death knell against the cold, stone walls. Time seemed to stretch infinitely, distorted by the oppressive silence broken only by their own shallow breaths. The cellar exuded a palpable malevolence, its shadows conspiring to swallow them whole. Then came the touch, a sensation so jarringly cold it seared their skin with an almost physical force. It was as though the very air had turned to ice, enveloping them in a suffocating embrace that left them gasping for breath. The chill seeped into their bones, rendering them numb to anything but the primal instinct to flee. But there was no escape, only the relentless grip of fear tightening around their heart. In the darkness, their senses sharpened to a fever pitch, each sound amplified into a cacophony of dread. They could hear the faint scrape of unseen claws against stone, the eerie whisper of something unseen moving in the shadows. And then, as abruptly as it had come, the touch vanished, leaving behind an unsettling silence that reverberated in their ears like a distant echo. They remained frozen in place, grappling with the stark reality of their vulnerability in the face of the unknown. 20 years on, the memory lingers, a spectral presence haunting their waking thoughts and restless dreams. The icy touch of that long-ago encounter remains vivid, a testament to the enduring power of childhood fears that refuse to be silenced by the passage of time. In the quiet moments, when shadows lengthen and the air grows thick with unease, they find themselves transported back to that cellar, a prisoner of their own recollections, forever haunted by the memory of a cold, ghostly hand that reached out from the darkness to touch their soul. In the dimly lit room, amidst the flickering shadows cast by a solitary lamp, the hero found solace in the presence of their frail mother. Her face, weathered by illness and time, still held a softness that offered a fleeting respite from the haunting memories that plagued their mind. "Mom," the hero began tentatively, their voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you about something. Something that's been troubling me." The words hung heavy in the air, charged with the weight of years of unspoken fear and uncertainty. Their mother, with eyes that betrayed a deep understanding born of shared struggle, listened intently. A gentle nod encouraged the hero to continue, to unburden their soul of the shadows that had clung to them since childhood. "I've been hearing strange noises at night," they confessed, their voice trembling slightly. "It's like something is moving in the darkness." And it's not just that the hero hesitated, searching for the courage to confront the darkest recesses of their past. I can't shake this memory," they finally admitted, their gaze drifting to a distant corner of the room as if seeking refuge from the intensity of their confession. "When I was a child, Grandma locked me in the cellar. It was terrifying. I could feel something cold touching me." Their mother's expression softened, lines of concern etched deeply into her brow. She reached out a trembling hand, offering comfort through the simple act of touch. "I'm so sorry, my dear," she murmured, her voice a soothing balm against the hero's frayed nerves. "You've carried this burden alone for too long." Together, in the quiet sanctuary of that dimly lit room, they spoke of fears and memories long suppressed. The hero recounted the chilling details of that fateful day in the cellar, while their mother listened with a tenderness that transcended words. As the conversation unfolded, the weight of decades-old anxieties began to lift, replaced by a fragile sense of understanding and acceptance. Their mother's reassurances, though unable to erase the scars of the past, offered a newfound clarity, a reminder that they were not alone in their struggle against the shadows. And so, in the flickering light of that solitary lamp, amidst the quiet cadence of their conversation, the hero found a measure of peace, a fragile truce with the ghosts of their childhood, and a tentative step towards healing the wounds that had long defined their existence. In the quiet of the dimly lit room, the hero sat opposite their mother, seeking solace in her presence amid the lingering echoes of childhood fears. The lamp cast flickering shadows on the walls, adding an eerie ambience to the weighty conversation that hung between them. "Mom," the hero began hesitantly, their voice betraying a mix of vulnerability and urgency, "I can't shake these memories. From last night, and from when I was a child." Their mother, her gentle gaze fixed on her child's troubled face, nodded encouragingly, silently urging them to continue. "It's like the past is haunting me," the hero admitted, their words hesitant but earnest. "I keep hearing those noises again, like something moving in the darkness. And then I remembered what Grandma did to me." Their voice faltered briefly, emotions welling up at the vivid recollection of the chilling experience. Their mother reached out, her touch light yet reassuring, a gesture of maternal comfort that spoke volumes. "Sweetheart," she said softly, her voice a soothing melody in the tense silence. "It's been many years. You were so young then, too young to understand." But these feelings the hero interrupted, their eyes searching their mother's face for answers that seemed just out of reach. I know," she replied gently, her tone tinged with empathy. "Sometimes our memories play tricks on us, especially when we're feeling scared or alone. What you heard last night, it could be anything, dear. Maybe just the old house settling." The hero nodded, though the fear still gnawed at their thoughts. But it felt so real they murmured, their voice barely above a whisper. "I believe you," their mother reassured, her gaze unwavering. "But sometimes what we remember, it's not exactly how things happened. Your mind can create shadows where there may be none." Together they sat in the subdued light, mother and child, grappling with the specters of the past that had resurfaced with such unsettling clarity. The hero found a measure of comfort in their mother's words, a lifeline thrown into the murky depths of their childhood fears. And Grandma, the hero, hesitated, unsure how to articulate the lingering unease. "Grandma loved you in her own way," their mother said softly, her voice tinged with a hint of sorrow. "But she was strict. Maybe she thought she was protecting you in her own way, as misguided as it might seem now." The hero nodded again, a mix of understanding and lingering uncertainty coloring their expression. "I just wish they began," their voice trailing off as the weight of unspoken wishes hung heavy in the air. "I know," their mother murmured, pulling them into a gentle embrace. "I know." In that quiet embrace, amidst the soft glow of the lamp and the murmur of settling house sounds, the hero found a fleeting sense of peace. It wasn't a resolution to their fears or a salve for their memories, but a reassurance that they were not alone in their journey to confront the shadows of their past. In the dimly lit sitting room, the hero's mother leaned forward, her expression serious yet tinged with a hint of apprehension. She clasped her hands together, a gesture that bespoke of both familiarity and unease, as she began to unravel a long-held secret about their ancestral home. "Sweetheart," she started softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "this house. It was built on drained marshlands centuries ago. People in this village have always believed that places like this carry memories, not just ordinary memories, but lingering echoes of the past." The hero listened intently, feeling a chill run down their spine, despite the warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth. The air seemed to thicken with unspoken revelations, hanging between them like a heavy veil. "You see," the mother continued, her gaze drifting towards the window where the moon cast eerie shadows on the floorboards, "there are stories, legends perhaps, whispers that speak of things left behind when the swamp was drained. Spirits, they say, or residual energies that can influence the living." She paused, gauging her child's reaction, before pressing on with a mixture of reluctance and a need to disclose what had long been kept in the shadows. "People here have always sensed it, especially in this house," she admitted, her voice now tinged with a touch of fear. "Strange occurrences, sounds in the night, feelings of being watched. Some even believe there are entities that linger, unable to move on." The hero's mind raced with thoughts, memories of unexplained occurrences flickering through their consciousness. The creaking floors at odd hours, the inexplicable drafts in sealed rooms, all now framed within the unsettling context their mother was painting. And Grandma, the hero, ventured cautiously, their voice trembling slightly with the weight of newfound understanding. "Your grandmother knew," the mother replied quietly, her eyes distant, as if recalling her own unsettling encounters. "She believed in those old tales, perhaps more than any of us. That's why she was so protective, so strict about certain things." The hero swallowed hard, the pieces of their family's history suddenly clicking into place like a macabre puzzle. The realization brought a mix of fear and fascination, a desire to uncover more, yet an instinctual urge to shield themselves from what lay beyond the veil of rationality. "But what does it mean for us?" the hero finally asked, their voice barely above a whisper, afraid to hear the answer yet unable to resist the pull of the unknown. The mother's gaze softened, her maternal instinct urging her to comfort, even as her words hinted at a reality beyond their control. "It means we must be vigilant," she said solemnly, reaching out to gently touch her child's hand. "To respect what came before us, to acknowledge that some things may never truly leave. But we also have each other, and that counts for something." As the fire crackled and the wind whispered against the window pane, the hero felt a newfound sense of connection to their roots, mingled with an unsettling awareness of the unseen forces that coexisted within the walls of their home. It was a realization that would linger long after the embers had dimmed, a testament to the enduring power of ancestral secrets and the mysteries they held. In the dimly lit kitchen, where the shadows seemed to dance uneasily along the walls, the hero sat at the worn wooden table, their mind awash with unsettling thoughts and the remnants of a haunting conversation with their mother. The events of the past few days had left them sleepless, their nerves frayed by the revelations about their family home and its ominous history. The mother, her face etched with concern and weariness from her own battles, approached quietly with a small vial in hand. Her touch was gentle as she placed it on the table in front of the hero, who looked up with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "I know you've been struggling," she began softly, her voice carrying the weight of both motherly love and the burden of ancestral secrets. "This might help, just for tonight, to ease your mind." The hero nodded silently, their fingers tracing the cool glass of the vial. Inside, a faint blue liquid shimmered under the flickering light of the oil lamp. It was a potion handed down through generations, a blend of herbs and whispers of old remedies believed to calm restless souls in times of turmoil. Taking a deep breath, the hero uncorked the vial and raised it to their lips, hesitating for just a moment before swallowing the bittersweet concoction. The taste was unfamiliar, yet strangely comforting, spreading warmth through their body like a protective cloak against the encroaching darkness. As minutes ticked by, the kitchen grew quieter, the oppressive weight of the night easing ever so slightly. The mother watched with silent vigilance, her gaze never leaving her child's face, searching for any sign of relief amidst the storm of emotions. Slowly, the hero felt the sharp edges of their fears soften, the restless thoughts giving way to a calmness they hadn't known in days. The shadows seemed to retreat, leaving behind a quietude that settled like a mist over the room. "Thank you," the hero finally whispered, their voice a fragile echo in the stillness. The mother offered a gentle smile, a flicker of reassurance amidst the lingering uncertainties. "Rest now," she urged softly, a mother's voice carrying both solace and unspoken worry. "Tomorrow is another day." With that, she turned to leave, leaving the hero to the quiet embrace of the kitchen, where the faint scent of herbs mingled with the remnants of old tales and the unspoken mysteries of their ancestral home. The potion worked its magic, offering a reprieve from the haunting echoes of the past, if only for tonight. The hero found themselves engulfed in a ceaseless cycle of domestic chores, each day bleeding into the next in a relentless blur of tasks and responsibilities. It was a routine born not out of necessity, but from an unspoken need to fill the void left by an absence that echoed with a haunting familiarity, a solitude reminiscent of the aftermath of their divorce. In the quiet corners of their once lively home, now only inhabited by the echoes of their own footsteps, the hero moved with mechanical precision, folding laundry that had lost its scent of warmth and familiarity, scrubbing dishes until their hands felt raw, and meticulously organizing shelves that seemed to mock their futile attempts at order. The days stretched on, punctuated only by the monotonous ticking of the clock and the distant hum of passing cars beyond the curtained windows. Each task completed was a fleeting distraction from the gnawing ache of loneliness that lingered, uninvited, in the corners of their mind. Sometimes, in the midst of this relentless busyness, the hero would pause, their breath catching in a moment of fleeting clarity. They would stand in the stillness of their own home, surrounded by the relics of a life that once promised joy and companionship. But now, those promises lay shattered, much like the fragments of their own fractured heart. The sense of alienation was palpable, as if they were a stranger in their own skin, navigating a world that had lost its color and vibrancy. Each passing day brought a deeper realization that their efforts to fill the void were futile, akin to trying to hold onto water slipping through their fingers. Yet, amidst the solitude and the relentless routine, there remained a quiet resilience, a flicker of hope that tomorrow might bring solace, or at least a momentary respite from the suffocating weight of loneliness. In these fleeting moments of reflection, the hero yearned for a glimpse of the person they once were, before the shadows of solitude cast their long, chilling embrace. And so they continued, day after day, in the ceaseless pursuit of order and distraction, hoping that amidst the mundane tasks and the quiet echoes of their solitary existence, they might find a way back to themselves. As Marina and the hero's mother withdrew further into the confines of their rooms, emerging less and less, the burden of household duties increasingly fell upon the shoulders of the grandmother. She moved through the house with a solemnity that mirrored the weight of their collective isolation, her once firm steps now burdened by the gravity of their deteriorating situation. The hero, seeking solace amidst the growing unease, turned to sedatives in a desperate attempt to find respite in sleep. Yet, instead of bringing calm, these medications merely blurred the edges of reality, casting a shadow over their dreams with visions that mirrored the somber reality of their waking hours. The once bustling home now echoed with a heavy silence broken only by the occasional sound of the grandmother's weary footsteps and the distant murmurings from behind closed doors. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken fears and unanswered questions, each passing day deepening the sense of foreboding that hung like a shroud over their lives. In the hazy twilight between wakefulness and sleep, the hero found themselves caught in a maelstrom of restless thoughts and haunting images. Dreams plagued by fragmented memories and half-formed fears, where shadows danced in the periphery of their subconscious, leaving them awake yet exhausted, trapped in a cycle of uneasy slumber. The deterioration of Marina and their mother's condition cast a pall over the household, a dark cloud that seemed to seep into every corner, staining even the most mundane moments with an undeniable sense of dread. The hero, grappling with their own inner turmoil, felt the weight of responsibility pressing down upon them, a silent witness to the unraveling of the lives they once knew. As night descended, the house settled into an eerie stillness, broken only by the soft murmurs of distant voices and the persistent ticking of the clock. Each passing hour brought with it a creeping sense of isolation, as if they were adrift in a sea of uncertainty, grappling with forces beyond their control. And so, amidst the gathering shadows and the heavy silence, the hero found themselves navigating a landscape fraught with sorrow and uncertainty, their dreams a reflection of the turmoil that had taken root within their once vibrant home. Nightmares plagued the hero's restless sleep, echoing with haunting screams that reverberated through the darkness of their subconscious. In these dreams, the cries seemed to pierce through the veil of sanity, leaving the hero gasping for breath in a waking nightmare. One fateful night, startled awake by a piercing scream that seemed all too real, the hero's eyes snapped open to behold a bizarre sight in the dimly lit corridor. There, illuminated by the flickering flame of a candle and clutching a pistol with trembling hands, stood their grandmother. Her eyes, usually sharp and piercing, now bulged with a manic intensity that sent a shiver down the hero's spine. In the surreal stillness of that moment, the hero's mind struggled to reconcile the images before them, the elderly figure casting eerie shadows on the walls, her face contorted in a mixture of fear and determination. The pistol, an incongruous presence in the hands of the woman they had known their whole life as a pillar of strength and stability. As the seconds stretched into eternity, the hero's breath caught in their throat, torn between the primal urge to flee and the unsettling curiosity that rooted them to the spot. The air hung heavy with unspoken questions, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows that seemed to mock the reality of what they were witnessing. With a trembling voice, the hero dared to speak, breaking the fragile silence that enveloped them like a suffocating cloak. The grandmother, startled from her trance-like state, slowly lowered the pistol, her eyes clouded with a mix of confusion and a trace of guilt. Her lips moved, but words failed to form coherent sentences, leaving the hero to decipher the cryptic tableau before them. In the aftermath of that surreal encounter, as the adrenaline slowly ebbed away, the hero wrestled with the unsettling revelation that their home harbored secrets darker than they had ever imagined. The nightmarish echoes of screams lingered in their mind, intertwining with the chilling reality of what they had witnessed, blurring the lines between dream and waking terror. Haunted by the memory of that night, the hero found themselves navigating a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty, where even the familiar faces of loved ones seemed shadowed by hidden motives and unspoken truths. Each passing moment seemed to deepen the mystery, casting a pall over their once serene existence and plunging them deeper into the heart of darkness that now threatened to consume their fragile reality. The hero's heart raced as they followed the piercing cries echoing through the house, each step closer amplifying the sense of foreboding that gripped their soul. Darkness enveloped the corridors like a suffocating cloak, the usual hum of electricity silenced, leaving only the eerie creaking of floorboards underfoot. Navigating through the labyrinthine halls, the hero's flashlight flickered uncertainly, casting dancing shadows that seemed to animate the very walls around them. The air was thick with an unsettling chill, as if unseen eyes watched their every move from the pitch-black corners. Suddenly, a grotesque silhouette twisted and contorted on the wall ahead, its shape morphing into a terrifying semblance of a monstrous figure. Frozen in terror, the hero's breath caught in their throat, the hairs on their necks standing on end. Was it a trick of the flickering light, or a manifestation of the darkest recesses of their imagination? Pushing forward despite their mounting fear, the hero's hand trembled as they reached out to touch the wall for support. Yet, just as their fingers brushed against the cold surface, a sensation of chilling, ghostly touch crept up their leg like icy tendrils. Panic surged through their veins, a primal urge to flee gripping them in its icy grip. In the dim glow of their flashlight, the hero glimpsed fleeting movements in the periphery, shadows darting across the floor, whispered voices carried on the stale air. Each step forward felt like a plunge into an abyss of uncertainty, where reality blurred with the macabre visions that tormented their mind. As they pressed on, drawn inexorably toward the source of the haunting cries, a flicker of hope flickered in the darkness, a faint glimmer of light seeping under a door, a sign that they were not entirely alone in this nightmare. Yet, with every passing moment, the dread only deepened, casting doubts on whether they would uncover the truth or succumb to the malevolent forces that seemed to lurk in every corner. With trembling resolve, the heroes steeled themselves against the encroaching darkness, driven by a desperate need to confront the horrors that lurked within their own home. Each step closer to the source of the terror brought them face to face with the unknown, a chilling reminder that some nightmares are not confined to the realm of dreams but lurk, waiting to ensnare the unwary in their tangled web of fear. The hero's heart pounded in their chest as they finally pinpointed the source of the haunting screams. Pushing open the door to the dimly lit room, a scene unfolded before them that sent a shiver down their spine. A woman, huddled in the corner, her cries echoing off the walls like a desperate plea for salvation. In the scant light filtering through the curtains, the figure of the woman, likely Marina, appeared frail and vulnerable, her face contorted with anguish. The air in the room felt heavy with sorrow, each sob reverberating through the hero's bones as they cautiously advanced, navigating by touch in the enveloping darkness. Marina, the hero, called softly, their voice barely a whisper in the oppressive silence. The woman's cries seemed to falter for a moment, as if she had sensed their presence but remained lost in her torment. The hero's outstretched hand trembled as they reached closer, the cool air chilling their fingertips. The room itself seemed to pulse with a spectral energy, shadows dancing on the walls like specters of the past. The hero's mind raced with questions, wondering what had driven Marina to such depths of despair within their own home. Memories of happier times mingled with the unsettling reality unfolding before them, blurring the lines between nightmare and waking life. With each step closer, the hero's senses heightened, attuned to every sound: the creak of floorboards, the hushed whispers of the wind outside, and Marina's inconsolable weeping. The room exuded a palpable sense of anguish, as if the very walls held secrets that whispered in the dark. Finally reaching Marina's side, the hero gently placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. She flinched at the touch, her eyes wide with fear and sorrow. "It's me," the hero murmured softly, their voice laced with concern and confusion. "What's happened? What's troubling you?" Marina's gaze flickered toward them, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering dread. I don't know," she managed to choke out between sobs, her voice quivering with emotion. "I saw something something terrible. As Marina's words hung in the air, the hero felt a chill crawl down their spine, a foreboding sense that whatever haunted their home was far more than just the shadows in the night. The darkness seemed to press in around them, suffocating and thick with unspoken fears. Together, in the dim light of that room, the hero and Marina faced an uncertain future, bound by the inexplicable horrors that had woven themselves into the fabric of their lives. Each moment was fraught with tension, the weight of unanswered questions hanging heavy in the air, as they sought to unravel the mysteries that threatened to consume them both. Andrew's heart raced as he burst into Marina's room, the sight before him chilling to the core. Marina lay on the floor in a state of hysteria, her legs adorned with small bruises reminiscent of those Andre had suffered after his night in the basement. Panic gripped him as he knelt beside her, his mind racing with questions and dread. "Marina, what happened?" Andrew's voice trembled with concern as he gently touched her shoulder. Her eyes, wide with fear, darted toward him, searching desperately for reassurance in his presence. I couldn't open the door upstairs," Marina stammered, her words punctuated by gasping sobs. "There was something there, something terrible. It wouldn't let me leave." Andrew's brow furrowed in disbelief and fear. The air in the room felt charged with an eerie tension, as if unseen forces lingered just beyond the threshold of perception. His own memories of the basement ordeal surged back, intertwining with Marina's current distress in a tangled web of inexplicable events. Cautiously, Andrew scanned the room, half expecting to see a manifestation of the threat Marina described. Shadows seemed to dance on the walls, elongating and contorting in the dim light. Every sound, the faint creak of floorboards, the distant rustle of curtains, sent a chill down his spine, amplifying the sense of foreboding that hung heavy in the air. "Marina, we need to get you out of here," Andrew urged, his voice urgent yet tinged with a helpless edge. "Let's go upstairs, away from whatever this is." With a shaky nod, Marina allowed Andrei to help her up, her eyes darting nervously around the room as they hurried toward the staircase. Each step felt like an eternity, the weight of unseen threats pressing down upon them. As they reached the top of the stairs, Andrei cast a glance back at Marina's room, half expecting to glimpse the source of their terror. But the room remained still and silent, a stark contrast to the turmoil they had just experienced. In the safety of the hallway, Andrei guided Marina to a more comfortable spot, her trembling gradually subsiding as they sat together. The ordeal had left them both shaken, grappling with the inexplicable and the lingering fear that whatever had haunted Marina still lurked nearby. "We'll figure this out," Andrei murmured, more to himself than to Marina, a solemn promise tinged with uncertainty. The mysteries of their home seemed to deepen with each passing moment, leaving them to confront a darkness that defied rational explanation. As the night wore on, Andrei kept a vigilant watch over Marina, haunted by the realization that their lives had become entangled in something far beyond their understanding, a haunting presence that refused to be ignored or explained away. Andrei's nerves were still on edge as he surveyed Marina's room, trying to make sense of the unsettling events that had unfolded. The sight of Marina's distress lingered in his mind, urging him to find answers, to uncover the source of their fear. As he scanned the room, his eyes fell upon the wooden dresser that stood slightly away from the wall. A flicker of suspicion ignited within him. Could there be something behind it? With cautious determination, Andrei approached the dresser and, gripping its edges firmly, began to shift it aside. The dresser moved reluctantly, revealing a narrow gap between it and the wall. Andrei's breath caught in his throat as he peered into the darkness within the recess. There, nestled in the shadows, was a hole in the wall, a jagged opening that seemed to emanate an aura of malevolence. Heart pounding, Andrei reached for a flashlight on Marina's bedside table and directed its beam into the cavity. The light illuminated a cramped space, its walls coated with a thin film of dust and neglect. But it was what lay deeper within that seized Andrei's attention, a faint glimmer of something unnatural, something that whispered of secrets long concealed. With trembling hands, Andrei extended his arm further into the hole, feeling the cold, rough edges of the interior. His fingers brushed against something, a bundle of old papers, yellowed with age and fragile to the touch. He withdrew them carefully, his heart racing with a mix of trepidation and anticipation. The papers revealed faded ink and cryptic symbols, remnants of a forgotten past that hinted at rituals and arcane knowledge. Andrei's mind raced as he tried to decipher their meaning, his thoughts veering between disbelief and a growing dread of what they might unveil. But it was a faint draft of air that drew his attention next, a subtle current that seemed to whisper secrets of its own. Andrei peered deeper into the hole, his gaze tracing the outline of the concealed space. What else lay hidden here? What else had been obscured from their sight, lurking in the shadows of their home? As he contemplated the implications, Andrei became acutely aware of the room around him, the oppressive silence, the weight of unseen eyes watching. The discovery had opened a door to a realm of uncertainty, where reality blurred with the supernatural, and every corner held the potential for unseen horrors. With a sense of urgency, Andrei carefully replaced the dresser, concealing the hole once more. The papers he kept close, a tangible link to the enigma that had gripped their lives. But the unsettling feeling remained, lingering like a specter in the room, a reminder that some truths were better left undisturbed. Leaving Marina's room, Andrei knew that the night's revelations were only the beginning. Their home harbored secrets dark, ancient secrets that beckoned from the shadows, promising answers that might forever alter their understanding of reality and haunt their dreams with their unearthly presence. After the sudden illumination of the house, Andrei's heart raced as he rushed to Marina's side. The flickering lights casting eerie shadows around them did little to alleviate the tension that hung thick in the air. Marina lay on her bed, her face etched with profound distress, hands trembling as she clutched Andrei's arm tightly. Marina's voice quivered, barely above a whisper. What was that? What's happening to us? Andrei struggled to find reassuring words, his own unease palpable. He helped Marina sit up, guiding her gently to lean against the pillows. The room seemed quieter now, the shadows less menacing under the harsh glare of the overhead lights. "It's going to be okay," Marina Andrei murmured, trying to sound composed despite the churning unease in his gut. He sat beside her on the edge of the bed, his hand still held firmly in hers. The touch was grounding, a lifeline amidst the uncertainty that gripped them both. "It was just a power surge," probably Andrei offered, though even he found the explanation feeble against the backdrop of recent events. "Maybe there's some issue with the wiring. I'll check it out in the morning." Marina nodded weakly, her eyes darting nervously around the room, as if expecting shadows to creep back in. "But the sounds, Andrei," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And that face. I saw it, clear as day." Andrei's jaw tightened, his mind replaying the horrifying image of Marina's terrified expression illuminated by the faint glow of her night lamp. He knew he couldn't dismiss her fear, not after everything they had experienced. "We'll figure it out, Marina. Tomorrow we'll figure it all out," he reassured her, though uncertainty gnawed at his own resolve. They sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the dim light of dawn beginning to filter through the curtains. Andrei remained by Marina's side throughout the restless night, his presence a silent promise of protection against the unknown forces that seemed to haunt their home. As the first rays of morning sunlight painted the walls with a faint warmth, Marina's grip on Andrei's hand relaxed, her breathing steadied, and her eyes, though still weary, held a glimmer of hope. Andrei sighed softly, relieved to see a semblance of calm returning to her features. "You should try to get some sleep now," Andrei suggested gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from Marina's forehead. "I'll be right here." Marina nodded, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. With a final squeeze of his hand, she closed her eyes, drifting into a troubled slumber. Andrei remained vigilant, his thoughts racing with unanswered questions and a sense of foreboding that refused to dissipate. The night had unraveled their sense of security, exposing layers of fear and uncertainty that lurked beneath the surface of their ordinary lives. As Andrei watched over Marina, a solemn promise formed in his mind to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences, to protect his family from whatever malevolent force had invaded their once safe haven. And so, amidst the lingering echoes of Marina's distress, Andrei waited in the dawn's fragile light, steeling himself for the challenges that lay ahead in their relentless pursuit of answers and the elusive peace they once took for granted. The next day dawned with a sense of urgency for Andre as he set about the task of sealing the rat hole he had discovered in Marina's room. The events of the previous night still lingered heavily in his mind, fueling a determination to safeguard his family from whatever unseen menace lurked beneath their home. Andre had spent the morning gathering supplies: a sturdy wooden plank, nails, and a hammer. His movements were methodical, though his hands trembled slightly as he recalled the eerie encounter with Marina and the unsettling discovery in the wall. The hole itself was small, barely noticeable, unless one knew where to look: a jagged gap hidden behind the displaced dresser. With each strike of the hammer, Andre felt a surge of relief mingled with apprehension. The sound of wood meeting nails echoed through the room, a stark contrast to the unnerving silence that had plagued them the night before. He worked diligently, his focus unwavering despite the occasional creaks and whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls. As the last nail was driven home, Andre stepped back to survey his handiwork. The plank fit snugly over the patched hole, obscuring any trace of the entry point that had caused them so much distress. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, a brief respite from the tension that had coiled tightly within him since the night's events unfolded. "Hopefully that'll keep whatever it was out," Andre murmured to himself, though doubt lingered in the back of his mind. He knew that physical barriers could only do so much against forces that defied explanation. Yet the act of securing the hole offered a semblance of control in a situation that felt increasingly out of his grasp. As he cleaned up the tools and debris, Andre couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a lingering paranoia that clung to him like a shadow. The house seemed quieter now, unnaturally so, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what might come next. Returning to Marina's room, Andre found her sitting on the bed, her expression a mix of exhaustion and cautious hope. She watched him silently, her eyes betraying the turmoil of the previous night's ordeal. Andre offered her a reassuring smile, though his own unease remained just beneath the surface. "I think we should be okay now," Andre said softly, sitting beside her. "I've sealed up the hole. It should keep anything from getting in." Marina nodded weakly, her fingers tracing the edge of the newly installed plank. "Thank you, Andre," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the strain. "I don't know what I would do without you." Andre squeezed her hand gently, his heart heavy with concern for her well-being. "We'll get through this, Marina," he vowed, his tone firm despite the uncertainty that loomed over them. "Together." They sat in silence for a while longer, the weight of unspoken fears hanging in the air. Andre knew that closing the hole was only the first step, a symbolic gesture against a threat that remained elusive and undefined. But for now it was a measure of reassurance, a barrier between their fragile sanctuary and the unknown forces that sought to intrude. As the day wore on, Andre kept a watchful eye on Marina, silently hoping that the night would pass without incident. Yet deep down, he knew that their ordeal was far from over. The memory of Marina's terrified cries and the haunting visage in the darkness lingered, a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked within their own home. And so, with a mixture of determination and dread, Andre prepared himself for the night ahead, a night fraught with uncertainty, where every creak of the floorboards and whisper of the wind seemed to echo with unseen threats. But amidst the shadows, he clung to the promise he had made to protect his family at all costs, even if it meant facing the horrors that awaited them in the darkness. Andre's descent into the basement was marked by a cautious determination, fueled by the urgency to uncover any signs of the creature's presence. The dim glow of his flashlight cut through the shadows, casting eerie shapes on the damp, neglected walls. The air was thick with a musty scent, a testament to years of neglect that seemed to seep into his bones. As he navigated the uneven floorboards, Andre couldn't shake the feeling of unease that clung to the cellar. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water from a leaking pipe or the distant hum of the furnace. Each step echoed faintly, a reminder of the vast emptiness that stretched beneath their feet. The basement seemed frozen in time, frozen in a state of decay and disrepair. Cobwebs clung to corners like sinister draperies, and dust danced in the beam of his flashlight as he swept it across the room. Old crates and forgotten belongings lay strewn haphazardly, casting eerie silhouettes in the flickering light. Andrew's mind wandered back to his childhood fears, the dread of what might lurk in the darkness below, waiting to pounce when least expected. He remembered the stories his friends whispered about ghosts and restless spirits haunting forgotten places, their voices a chilling echo in the back of his mind. With a deep breath, Andre pressed on, determined to search every corner for any clue that could explain the mysterious occurrences plaguing their home. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and adrenaline, his senses heightened to every sound and movement around him. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to press down on him, a weight that threatened to suffocate his resolve. As he reached the far corner of the cellar, Andre noticed a faint scratching sound coming from behind a stack of old newspapers. His pulse quickened as he cautiously approached, his grip tightening on the flashlight. With trembling hands, he moved the papers aside, revealing nothing more than a scattering of rat droppings and a rusted pipe. Disappointment mingled with relief, as Andre realized there were no immediate signs of the creature's lair or its presence. Yet the unsettling feeling persisted, a lingering suspicion that something unseen still lurked in the shadows, biding its time. Retracing his steps, Andre ascended the creaking stairs, leaving the basement behind but carrying with him a renewed sense of foreboding. The day outside offered no solace, its muted colors and overcast sky mirroring the pall that hung over their household. As he wandered aimlessly along the country road, Andre couldn't shake the image of his home, the quiet facade, the doors firmly closed, as if to ward off an unseen threat. He thought of Marina and his mother, hidden away behind those doors, their fear palpable even from a distance. The hours passed in a blur of introspection and uncertainty. Andre's thoughts circled back to the basement, the dampness, the decay, and the echoes of childhood fears that still haunted him. The darkness seemed to cling to him, a reminder of the fragility of their sanctuary amidst the encroaching unknown. When dusk finally settled over the horizon, Andre returned home, his mind racing with unanswered questions and unresolved fears. The evening crept in like a shroud, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch with every passing minute. With a heavy heart, Andre prepared himself for another night of vigilance, knowing that the basement's secrets remained elusive and the creature's intentions unclear. He braced himself for what lay ahead, determined to protect his family from whatever darkness lurked beneath their feet, even as his own doubts threatened to consume him. Andre sat alone in the basement, surrounded by the musty scent of neglect and the lingering shadows of his childhood fears. Memories flooded his mind like rats scurrying in the darkness, gnawing at the edges of his consciousness. He had always been afraid of the unknown lurking in the corners of his thoughts, much like the elusive rat that nibbled away at memories and retreated into the safety of hidden recesses. As he reflected on the nature of fear, Andre couldn't shake the profound sense of loneliness that permeated their home. Despite the presence of his mother and grandmother, he felt abandoned and forgotten, left to confront the mysteries of the basement alone. The weight of resentment settled heavily upon him as he pondered their actions or lack thereof in the face of his childhood terrors. Anger simmered beneath the surface as Andre dwelled on his grandmother's stern punishments and his mother's passive allowance of them. He felt betrayed by their inability to protect him from the dark specter that haunted their home. His thoughts drifted to his father, absent yet somehow still a looming presence in his memories. He wondered if his father had ever truly understood how his dreams of a happy family were shattered by the hidden menace within their walls. Tears welled up in Andre's eyes, a mixture of sorrow, frustration, and unresolved grief. The ache of betrayal cut deep, mingling with the fear that had rooted itself in his heart since childhood. He knew then that his struggle was not just against the physical manifestations of darkness in the basement, but against the shadows of his own past and the shattered trust that haunted their family. In the dim light of the basement, Andre made a silent vow to confront the secrets that had long been buried beneath layers of denial and fear. He resolved to uncover the truth, not just for his own peace of mind, but to reclaim the semblance of security that had been torn from him. With a heavy heart and determined spirit, he knew the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but he was ready to face it, to confront the darkness that had plagued their home and threatened to tear them apart. As he ascended the stairs, leaving behind the oppressive stillness of the basement, Andre carried with him a newfound resolve. The echoes of his childhood fears lingered, but he was determined to shine a light into the shadows, to expose the truth and, perhaps, to find a way to mend the broken pieces of their family before it was too late. Andrei's heart raced as he descended into the basement once more, his flashlight cutting through the thick darkness like a feeble sword against encroaching shadows. The air was heavy with dampness, clinging to his skin like a shroud of uncertainty. As he moved deeper into the cellar, his senses heightened, attuned to every creak and whisper that echoed through the musty corridors. It was then that he noticed a peculiar anomaly on the far wall. A dark, swirling patch that seemed to defy the laws of physics, emitting a grayish glow that cast an eerie pallor over the surrounding space. The basement, once familiar albeit foreboding, now appeared starkly alien under the influence of this strange phenomenon. Colors lost their vibrancy, textures dulled to lifeless shades, and the very air felt thick with an unsettling presence. The sound that accompanied this anomaly was equally unsettling, a wet, squelching noise that seemed to originate from the very spot where the old bog once existed. It pulsed like a relentless heartbeat, sending shivers down Andrei's spine and causing an unbearable pressure in his ears, as if the basement itself were alive and breathing around him. Drawing closer, Andrei's breath caught in his throat as he discovered the source of the disturbance, a small, perfectly round hole in the wall. It appeared almost organic, pulsating gently as if it had a life of its own. The hole exuded a peculiar odor, a mixture of decay and something indefinably primal, assaulting his senses and beckoning him closer against his better judgment. Mesmerized yet repulsed, Andrei hesitated, his mind struggling to comprehend the implications of this bizarre discovery. The hole seemed to possess its own rhythm, drawing him in with an irresistible allure that defied reason. With each passing moment, he felt his willpower slipping, succumbing to the inexorable pull of the unknown. Fear gripped Andrei's heart as he realized he was losing control, both of his surroundings and perhaps of his very self. The basement, once a sanctuary of childhood fears and hidden secrets, had transformed into a realm of nightmarish possibilities, where reality blurred and sanity teetered on the edge of abyss. With a final surge of determination, Andrei tore his gaze away from the pulsating hole, stumbling backward in retreat. His mind reeled with unanswered questions and primal dread, yet he knew instinctively that whatever lay beyond that threshold was not meant for mortal comprehension. As he ascended the stairs, leaving the basement and its haunting mysteries behind, Andrei vowed to uncover the truth that lurked beneath the surface of his family's home. For in that dark and desolate place, where reality melded with nightmare, lay the key to understanding the malevolent force that threatened to consume them all. Andrei's pulse raced as he ascended the basement stairs. The image of the face on the bottom step burned into his mind. It had appeared suddenly, its eyes closed as if in quiet repose, yet its presence had been anything but peaceful. The moment Andrei blinked, the face vanished, leaving him gripped by a sensation that his very consciousness was being drawn towards the wall where the ominous hole loomed. Recoiling instinctively, Andrei stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. The air around him felt charged with an unseen energy, thick and suffocating, as if the basement itself exhaled an unsettling breath. His mind struggled to comprehend the surreal encounter, grappling with the irrational fear that had gripped him since discovering the enigmatic void. Moments later, as Andrei reached the top of the stairs, a wave of dizziness overcame him. The world spun, and he collapsed onto the cold, earthen floor of the basement. Darkness enveloped him, wrapping him in its oppressive embrace as consciousness slipped away. When Andrei regained awareness, he found himself sprawled on the damp ground, enveloped in pitch-black darkness. Panic surged through him as he realized he had lost his flashlight, leaving him utterly defenseless in the foreboding depths below. Above, a woman's scream pierced the silence, echoing through the house and adding to his mounting terror. Desperately feeling around on the cold earth, Andrei's trembling fingers eventually closed around the familiar shape of his flashlight. With a shaky breath, he clicked it on, the feeble beam slicing through the darkness and casting stark shadows around him. The basement seemed more ominous now, each corner hiding unseen horrors that threatened to emerge from the depths of his imagination. Rising to his feet, Andrei stumbled towards the stairs, driven by an urgent need to escape the claustrophobic confines of the basement. As he ascended, A rush of relief washed over him as he felt the unusually warm and clean air of the house enveloping him. Yet, his relief was short-lived as he heard a faint but distinct noise coming from the second floor, a sound that chilled him to the core and reminded him that the terror lurking within the walls of his home was far from over. Andre emerged from the basement, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The events of the night had left an indelible mark on his psyche, shattering the illusion of safety and exposing the unsettling truth that something malevolent resided within the very fabric of his home. As he stood in the hallway, bathed in the glow of the flickering flashlight, Andre knew that he had only scratched the surface of a darkness that threatened to consume everything he held dear. Andre's heart pounded as he encountered Marina in an unnerving state, her visage akin to that of a resurrected corpse. Her words spilled out in disjointed fragments, her eyes vacant yet strangely focused on him. "He needs," she muttered, her voice hollow and distant, sending a chill down Andre's spine. Her mention of opening the door echoed ominously in his mind, the implications shrouded in a sinister mystery. Pushing aside his own mounting fear, Andre ascended to his mother's bedroom, drawn by the anguished cries that reverberated through the silent house. Entering the dimly lit room, he found his mother seated on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as if clutching onto an invisible lifeline. Tears streaked down her face, her apologies flowing ceaselessly towards an unseen presence, her eyes darting frantically around the room as if seeking forgiveness from an elusive figure. As Andre's gaze scanned the room in bewilderment, it froze upon a grotesque sight at the foot of the bed. A hideous creature, its spherical head grotesquely disproportionate to its minuscule body, clambered up the blankets with an eerie deliberation. Its dark, featureless eyes fixated on Andre, exuding an otherworldly malevolence that sent waves of revulsion and dread coursing through him. The creature's movements were calculated and deliberate, as if it possessed an intelligence far beyond its nightmarish appearance. Andre recoiled instinctively, the sight of the creature burning into his mind like a searing brand. Its presence defied rational explanation, defiled the sanctity of the room with its unsettling aura. Fear gripped him in a vice-like hold, his mind struggling to reconcile the grotesque reality before him with the fragile veil of normalcy he had clung to. With trembling hands, Andre reached for the light switch, the room bathed in a harsh, clinical light that momentarily banished the creature back into the shadows. Yet the memory of its ghastly form lingered like a stain upon his consciousness, a testament to the horrors that lurked within the walls of his once peaceful home. As he stood there, grappling with the terrifying tableau before him, Andre knew that the events of this night had irrevocably shattered his perception of reality. The boundaries between the natural and the supernatural had blurred into a nightmarish tapestry, leaving him teetering on the edge of an abyss where every shadow concealed a lurking terror. In the midst of his turmoil, Andre's thoughts raced back to Marina's cryptic words and his mother's inconsolable grief. The inexplicable horrors that had unfolded in their presence were harbingers of a malevolent force that defied comprehension, a force that now threatened to engulf everything Andre held dear. In the midst of the chaotic scene, the room erupted into gunfire, each shot echoing like thunderclaps in Andre's ears. The sharp cracks of gunfire mingled with the acrid stench of gunpowder, saturating the air and filling Andre's lungs with its bitter taste. Feathers from the torn bedding danced in the air like spectral snowflakes, a surreal contrast to the violence that had engulfed the room. Andre's instincts screamed at him to flee, to escape the madness unfolding before him. He dashed out of the room, the urgent voices of Marina and his grandmother barely registering in his panicked mind. The gravity of the situation took moments to fully settle in. His family was under siege, their sanctuary turned into a battleground by forces beyond his comprehension. Descending the staircase in a frenzy, Andre caught sight of his grandmother clutching a velvet-wrapped bundle, undoubtedly concealing the firearm that had shattered the fragile peace of their home. Her face, usually a portrait of stoicism, betrayed a grim determination, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and resolve as she steadied herself for whatever may come next. Returning to the house, Andre found the once darkened rooms now bathed in an unsettling glow of artificial light. His mother lay motionless on the sofa, the toll of the night's horrors evident in her stillness. The paramedics arrived swiftly, their urgent footsteps and efficient movements a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned mere moments ago. His mother's condition was dire. She had suffered a stroke amidst the turmoil, her life hanging precariously in the balance. As the paramedics worked with practiced urgency, injecting life-saving medications and preparing her for transport, Andrei felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. His attempts to comprehend the events of the night felt futile in the face of such profound and inexplicable tragedy. Meanwhile, Marina, her fragile state exacerbated by the night's horrors, received a sedative to calm her shattered nerves. Andrei watched as she drifted into a troubled sleep, her haunted eyes closing momentarily to the nightmare that had unfolded within their own walls. Alone now in his father's study, Andrei found solace in the familiar surroundings, surrounded by shelves of books that had once seemed a refuge from the world's harsh realities. Yet even here, he could not escape the relentless questions that gnawed at his mind, questions about the nature of the entity that had brought such devastation upon his family, questions about his own role in confronting the malevolent forces that now threatened everything he held dear. As he sat in the dimly lit room, penning his thoughts in a desperate attempt to make sense of the senseless, Andrei realized that the events of this night had irrevocably altered the course of their lives. The veil of normalcy had been torn asunder, revealing a darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of their seemingly tranquil existence. Haunted by the specter of that night, Andrei vowed to uncover the truth behind the inexplicable occurrences that had shattered their world. With his mother fighting for her life and his family fractured by fear and uncertainty, he knew that the journey ahead would demand courage, resilience, and a willingness to confront the darkest corners of their shared reality. Upon waking, Andrei found himself face to face with his grandmother, her eyes holding a mix of concern and determination. She firmly insisted that he should not go to his mother, asserting adamantly that there had been no body. His frustration boiled over as he demanded answers, desperate to unravel the mystery of the night's events and identify the identity of the mysterious figure he had encountered. In a moment of grim clarity, his grandmother Sofia Wojciech recounted a chilling tale that had been buried deep within their family's history. In 1955, during the construction of their home, a tragic event unfolded: the birth of a stillborn child. Sofia, burdened by grief and fear of social stigma, secretly buried the infant's body within the foundation of the house, concealing the terrible truth from all but herself. Over the years, this dark secret festered beneath the tranquil facade of their home, its malevolent presence slowly seeping into the very fabric of their lives. Unexplained noises, eerie whispers, and unsettling touches in the basement were all manifestations of the unresolved anguish and guilt that had been buried along with the infant's remains. Andrei, raised by his grandmother and mother who shielded him from the truth, had unwittingly become a vessel for the latent evil rooted in the house's foundation. Andrei's arrival back into their lives 8 years later seemed to catalyze the awakening of this suppressed malevolence. The once forgotten incident began to exert its influence, culminating in the horrifying events that had unfolded during that fateful night. His family's attempts to shield him from the truth had inadvertently exposed him to the very darkness they had sought to protect him from. As Andrei grappled with the implications of his grandmother's revelation, a chilling realization dawned upon him: the entity that had tormented them was not merely a random malevolent force, but a manifestation of the unresolved tragedy buried within the house itself. The sinister occurrences were not isolated incidents, but a sinister echo of a buried secret demanding to be unearthed. Haunted by this newfound knowledge, Andrei confronted the stark reality that his family's seemingly tranquil existence had been an illusion, shattered by the weight of untold secrets and suppressed truths. With his mother fighting for her life, his grandmother holding onto her secrets, and himself caught in the grip of an unseen malevolence, Andrei knew that unraveling the mysteries of their home would require courage and resolve beyond anything he had ever imagined. Andrei spent a restless night in the hospital, his mind swirling with anxiety and grief as he awaited news of his mother's condition. The sterile, antiseptic corridors echoed with the faint murmurs of nurses and the occasional beep of medical equipment. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each minute ticking by with excruciating slowness. At 5 a.m., the devastating news finally arrived: his mother's heart had stopped beating. The world around Andre seemed to collapse in on itself as he grappled with the sudden finality of her passing. His grief was raw and overwhelming, a tidal wave crashing over him and leaving him gasping for air in its wake. In that moment, his entire existence felt hollowed out, devoid of meaning. After the funeral rites and the mournful gathering of relatives, Andre returned to the now eerily quiet house. The grief hung heavy in the air, palpable and suffocating. He retreated into the solitude of his thoughts, his mind replaying the events of the past days in a relentless loop. Unbeknownst to anyone, Andre had made a silent vow to confront the darkness that had plagued his family for decades. Armed with a canister of acid, a shovel, gloves, and a sturdy sack, he descended once more into the basement, the epicenter of their family's hidden horrors. The basement greeted him with its familiar damp chill and the musty scent of neglect. Determinedly, Andre set to work, digging methodically through the cold, hard earth. Every scrape of the shovel against dirt echoed in the empty silence, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded not long ago. Then, amidst the damp soil and cobwebbed corners, he unearthed it, the bundle wrapped in tattered cloth, concealed for so many years beneath layers of guilt and secrecy. With trembling hands, Andre carefully unwrapped the fabric, revealing the tiny, fragile form of a newborn. Tears streamed down his cheeks unchecked as he cradled the small, lifeless body in his arms. The weight of generations of sorrow and betrayal bore down on him as he gently placed the infant into the waiting sack. It was a moment of profound closure, mixed with unbearable sorrow, a final act of redemption for the innocent soul that had been denied its rightful rest for so long. Andre emerged from the basement, his heart heavy, but his resolve unshaken. The morning sun filtered weakly through the windows, casting long shadows across the room where he had spent his childhood. He knew that this grim chapter in their family's history had finally come to a close, but the scars it had left would forever linger in the shadows of their lives. As he stood in the quiet solitude of the basement, Andre silently vowed to honor his mother's memory and to confront the truths that had haunted them all. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges and painful revelations, but he was determined to face them head-on, no longer bound by the darkness that had held their family captive for so long. Andre stood outside the house, his hands trembling uncontrollably as he gripped the canister of acid tightly. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the turmoil within him. The morning air felt heavy with the weight of his decision, thickened further by the acrid stench of the acid swirling around him. Carefully, Andre poured the corrosive liquid onto the bundle that held the remains of the infant, his breath catching in his throat as the chemical reaction began. Fumes rose in twisted tendrils, dancing ominously in the weak sunlight filtering through the clouds. It was a macabre scene, one that blurred the lines between desperation and redemption. Emotions overwhelmed Andre in waves: grief, guilt, and a profound sense of relief intermingled in his tumultuous inner landscape. He lit a cigarette, hoping its acrid smoke would somehow dull the sharp edges of reality that cut through his soul. But the cigarette burned down to the filter untouched, a testament to his distracted mind and frayed nerves. As the acid hissed and bubbled, consuming the cloth and the tiny bones within, Andre found himself gasping for breath, his eyes burning from both the chemical vapors and the tears he could no longer contain. The air seemed to close in around him, suffocating and dense with the weight of decades of suppressed secrets and unspoken truths. When the task was finally done, Andre stumbled away from the scene, leaving behind the house that had been both sanctuary and prison. He took only the essentials with him, leaving behind the haunting memories and the spectral whispers that had plagued his nights for years. For the next 14 years, Andre lived a solitary life, his days immersed in the quiet routine of publishing, a profession that offered solace in its structured monotony. He never remarried, never quite able to shake off the shadows that followed him, both in dreams and waking hours. His notebooks, filled with disjointed scribbles and haunting sketches, bore witness to his ongoing struggle to make sense of the horrors he had witnessed and the darkness that still clawed at the edges of his consciousness. At 47, Andre reflected on his journey, the scars on his soul, hidden beneath layers of resilience and stoicism. He had lost sight in his right eye, a physical reminder of the price he had paid for confronting the buried malevolence of his family's past. Yet, despite the passage of time and the semblance of normalcy he had carved out for himself, he knew deep down that some nightmares never truly ended. As he sat in the dimly lit room of his apartment, surrounded by the remnants of a life forged in solitude and haunted by specters of the past, Andre continued to grapple with the intangible terrors that seemed to emanate from realms beyond. The events of that fateful night, the acid, the infant's remains, the whispers in the dark remained etched in his memory like scars on his soul, a testament to the enduring power of fear and the relentless pursuit of truth, no matter how terrifying it might be.